Welcome back to the Iron Sights podcast. Today I have Jeff Nichols with me, joining me from a long way away. Jeff, where are you, man?
Virginia Beach. And don't be, if you've not been to Virginia Beach and you come to Virginia Beach, don't be surprised if you can't find a beach. Swamp. So it's a Virginia swamp is where I live.
Well, thanks for joining us from so far away, man. We're just coming off the holidays. There's a part of and I'm anxious to get this interview with you because I just recently heard you talking about some things with regard to making a commitment to your fitness and how important that is, and kind of rechecking in, maybe taking self-inventory. So I want to talk about a few of those things. But before we get to any of that, you've got an extensive background, and it's an interesting one for a lot of reasons, particularly to me, in that you were in the world of strength and conditioning before you had a military career. And that military career led you into the Navy, which then led you into the being a Navy SEAL. And then you jumped back out of the military to pursue the strength and conditioning career once again. And that's a much different perspective than anybody that I know that's sort of come from the military that has also now tried to pursue the world of strength and conditioning. So you've got in human performance, you've got to have some interesting perspectives to share. And I want to talk about those things. So I'm going to shut up and maybe just kind of, if you could maybe just give us a little bit of an overview, who you are, talk about performance first and what you're doing, and then we'll kind of shift into some of that other stuff.
Yeah, in hindsight, I think I would agree with that, just because I've not met anyone that's had the same life path that I've had to this. And so I went to college purely because I wanted to be a professional baseball player. I was on a baseball scholarship, played junior college baseball, and found myself playing Division I baseball at Troy University. Still around, and Troy is not the same college as it was when I showed up. It's in its own right, it was beautiful. Now it's beautiful college, beautiful university. And so I got down there in baseball, like so for many people that have a dream, it didn't work out the way that I had hoped. But man, in hindsight, we'll kind of get to that. Like it worked out awesome, right? So, but I had my reasons for stopping baseball were just the end of my playing career, but I wasn't, inside of me, we'll say, my intuition, my sense of why I played baseball so diligently and trained for it was like, I still wanted that piece. Ironically enough, I was a very small child, believe it or not, extremely small. I wrestled 103 all through high school in Iowa, from. So good wrestling, very small, got the hell kicked out of me by a bunch of All-Americans that have wrestled in Iowa, like my best friend still,
Yeah, wrestling's a thing in Iowa.
I learned the really good defense, we'll say, right? So fast forwarding back to Troy, and had a real love for weight training because I started doing it when I was 12. That's how I had, as a child, I really looked up towards we'll call a masculine character, the Rambos, the Commandos, the big football players, the Bo Jacksons, the guys that not only were good, but they also in my opinion, looked the part, right? So weight training for me seemed to be a very obvious choice. And so I started doing it as a young child. When my time playing college baseball was at end, it just so happened like the stars aligned. That's what happened, is like the first time ever that Troy University ever had offered an assistant strength coach position. So the head strength coach is still down there running it, Richard Schaughnessy, hired me like on the spot, essentially. He's like, hey, it's like yours. I'm like, yep, it's mine.
Wow.
And I started, at the time the university had 17 sports, and I managed 14 of the 17 basically full time, to include the ROTC, Army, and Air Force. That was like my first job. And it was perfect because I had intentions at that point when I stopped playing baseball. I was like, well, I'm going to go join the Navy. But I had time to graduate still, and I still was trying to prepare and train for military service. Specifically, my goal was to be a SEAL. Fast forwarding then, right, like that experience as an exercise physiologist and a strength coach, I stayed on the university for a year and a half prior to enlisting. And then when I showed up to buds and things, it's like I saw things. I saw the obstacle course. I saw selection as a sporting event more than I did as a selection event or a deselection event. I just looked at the 60-foot cargo net and went, climb on the outside. It can be faster. I saw it as a math problem more than I did something that couldn't be achieved.
That's interesting, man, because a lot of the strength coaches I know that have been very successful in their careers look at everything like a math problem. And we'll talk about programming and what you're doing with your business and how you're helping people. It's very science-based. There's a huge, science foundation to all of it. So a lot of it is math. And the course of study that you were in, going down the path here, I believe there's 2 degrees there. One's in chemistry as well, if I'm not wrong.
I actually was going to go to pre-med. My goal is to go to orthopedic school. Again, go the best surgeon, probably orthopedic surgeon, arguably in the world, historically, is James Andrews. He did Bo Jackson's hip. His predecessor is Dr. Jeff Dugas, and now is a close friend of mine. It was like, that was my path. I wanted to follow in the footsteps of James Andrews. And because he was the surgeon for Troy. Who knew the best surgeon on the planet is at Troy University and still is, right? So
Moon, sun, and stars, man. Things are lining up for you, man. Things are lining up.
Okay, who knows? At the time, I had no idea. I was so selfish and centered. Like, who knew that I was with like Dr. James Andrews? Like, his car, he had a Rolls Royce, and his license plate said Bo's Hip. BOS.
No shit.
Yeah, right. So that's the deal. And like that was my mentor, one of them, right? And so Coach Shaughnessy was still there, and so it even gets stranger, right? Like, so I go to SEAL Team 5. I get my 2 deployments there, and then I screened for Dev Group, and I end up going. And my last 8 years of service, I was at SEAL Team 6 there, and what an amazing opportunity I had to work with legends and like heroes, like real heroes, not the ones that have books. They're real heroes, right? Like, that have done all the operations, not just gleaned, the work that everyone else does and compiles in a book and calls themselves a hero, right? So that's
maybe a good storyteller, if you will. So
I show up and I take my exercise physiology brain and I'm like, okay, like, because that place, they're about solutions. Like, really about solutions. And if I came to the table with a problem and a real solution how to go through it, you can get it funded, right? Like, it's that amazing there, right? So I show up and see a real deficiency in, the way that we have an opportunity to take care of ourselves, like amenities, right? Like, I had been to, college and professional teams as a strength coach, is not as an employee, but as an observer and as a guest, and seeing all of these amenities from float tanks to exercise physiologists on staff, to dietitians on staff, the facilities. And I was like, this place, there's unlimited budget, unlimited great people, and there's not a limitation on the rules like the NCAA, like you can only practice so many hours and so forth. So I'm like, wait a minute. So over the course of my first couple of deployments there, some close mentors and friends of mine, team leaders, helped me develop this human performance sort of idea, right? It wasn't really my idea because there's other people doing it as well, but I put it to words. And it just so happened that the CEO at the time kind of had a very similar idea. And when we came together, he's like, run with it. Here's the budget. Go hire people. And so I was part of Navel Special Warfare and JSOC's sort of hiring process for the preservation of the force, the POTIF, which is now called the Human Performance something or other, but it's changed names. But my point is all of a sudden this guy, this E6 that had this exercise physiology background, is given autonomy by the CEO of the command to go, hey, go hire people, go find people. What are we missing? And so I was able to do that. And then, right, the human being that coined the word TSAC, Tactical Strength Conditioning, a guy named Mark Stevenson, at the time he was the director of the NSCA's training center, and I went out there to just go observe. He had no idea that I was observing him to hire. So we brought him out as a consultant, and at the end of the consult, we're like, hey, do you want the job, essentially?
Oh, wow.
So then, right, it gets steeper. I'm thrown into this golden conics box where no one says no. So I was able to go everywhere, US ski and snowboard. I go to all these high performance facilities to go, we need to do it better. Okay, so let me close this up. So I did that for about 18 months at the command as basically my full collateral duty. And then I got out, and it was an obvious thing to go, okay, well, with limitations that were, for own reasons, because active duty, I don't have those limitations in the civilian world. So now my better half, my wife, Catherine, and I, that's what performance first is like, as many of the things that we feel like young operators that really have a real true sense of service. There is it just like an athlete. It's like, let's offer a place where they can begin to resolve some of those physical, emotional, and even, dare I say, spiritual issues that come in those extreme environments. That, like if you're a first round draft pick in Major League Baseball, there's plenty of coaches that you can seek advice from and get and seek improvement. We just look at it and go, well, why is there no one in the military doing it? Well, it's the same thing in the NFL. Like, it's incentivized. You go to the NFL Combine and you run the fastest time. You have the best. There's a real financial incentive to do that. Mm-hmm. But where is that for the PST and our military and law enforcement? Well, the difference is there's not, except there are people that will approach it the same sort of veracity like I did. It just, the opportunity wasn't available.
Right.
So the people we train are just like me in a sense. They're like really, really dedicated to becoming a professional soldier prior to coming in, and it's super, it's super compelling for me to continue to do it because it's one of the few places that I can find real hope. In this place, in this world. Not that there's not hope. I'm saying from my experience, the way I see this world through my lens of life experience, I'm like, man, who would want to ever serve? Well, I did, and people still do. And it's like, oh, that's why. Like, that's special. Like, that's
the drive.
A beautiful human being that wants to go serve. And that's why we do it, So...
Man, again, this is the reason I wanted to have you on, because of the perspective that you have and the commitment that you've made to continuing to serve in your own way through your business. And I can speak from personal experience. Doing that with a life, with a partner in life, and your number one fan and all that stuff is a special way to do it too, because sometimes, you might have a bad day, right? And you need somebody to help pick you up, but there's also a balance that goes into that. I didn't want that to get left unacknowledged. But I wonder if we could let's backtrack just a second, because the term that you used right up front in terms of what you realized and what really led down this path for you were the deficiencies. There were a few other key terms or key things that you mentioned in there with regard to basically developing somebody before they go through the selection process, which, a lot of people are reaching and grabbing at things, and you've made it very accessible to them now to be able to prepare themselves. But let's go back to the deficiencies piece. Can we just outline maybe some of the higher level stuff that you noticed right off the bat going, wow, well, it's no wonder the dropout rate or the failure rate at this is so high. Maybe you can speak to that a little.
Yeah, I mean, from the pre-selection part, there's definitely, the big thing is there's a real lack of awareness in society now, because we've really limited life consequences. Because if something's not fair, you don't like it. We have the idea has been now perpetuated that it doesn't matter. You're just as equal. You're just as competent, even though you don't have to really go through it. And that's why I always say everyone that goes to Spec War wants to be a superhero, but no one really wants to go through the course. And we live it every day. So like we have an athlete that's finishing up. He's taking his final PST here on the 6th. His official. He'll get his contract without a doubt. We had someone visit recently with someone that we've trained in the past, and a year ago still hasn't pulled the trigger. Still is like, well, I'm on the fence, this, that, and his PST numbers are all over 100 push-pull. Pull-ups his push-up sit-ups are over 100. His pull-ups are in the 30s. He's a sub 830 run and swim. You're like,
solid.
Well, everyone wants to be a superhero, because then he's like, well, maybe I won't go to Buzz. Maybe I'll go to SF, and maybe I'll be a Ranger. I'm like,
maybe this, maybe that.
He'll never go. It comes from a wealthy family, right? And it's like that sense of commitment has always been offered and given rather than achieved. And how do I also know that? Because I was doing that to my son. I was giving him everything, was spoiling the shit out of him, right? Now it's like, nope, no, man.
It's consequences.
I love you with boundaries.
Yeah.
And I had to learn that, And so in every single day, and it's not to discredit someone's willingness to do service. And I'm going to say this, And if it offends somebody, good. The reality is this society, the way we have created, right? We as people, we as humans, we've created the society that we have to live in. And within that society that we've created, there is a pecking order. Whether you want to know it or not, whether you want to admit it or not, or whether you want to even consider that I'm not crazy. The fact of the matter is, the very first day I showed up to Bud's, we had a guy named Frank Choyeski, corpsman, stud. And he went into Huntington Beach, probably became a police officer from what I remember. I'm using names because I have reverence. I appreciate this human being. He offered me something that I still use today. He said, society will never differentiate between a Bud student versus a Navy SEAL versus a SEAL Team 6 operator. And that is a shame. Not because the guy from SEAL Team 6 can go, I'm awesome. And no. Like, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is also when I showed up at SEAL Team 5, I realized how truly inept most of those operators were. Not because they're bad people, and I'm not calling people names. But the reality is that most people inside are totally fine with letting society realize or think that the work that a Whiteside Navy SEAL did for 22 years with 1 or 2 combat deployments, maybe, is not the same with someone with 25 years or 11 years with 15 or 20 deployments. They're not the same. And it's okay, because even internally, I didn't want to, like, it's the same reason why I didn't want to go from Red Squadron back to SEAL Team 5. That is a huge step back for me personally and professionally. I'm not going to develop my skill there. Like it or not, they are not the same. And it's not because I'm saying so. If you look at the strategic level, it's defined as so. No Whiteside SEAL team is ever going to do a hostage rescue. No Whiteside SEAL team is ever going to do a skydiving mission. Why?
So they never get to go through it. They never get to go through it, right?
So why am I soapboxing? I'm soapboxing because we people that are out here trying to make a difference, and the people that are out there in their own way trying to make a difference, they've got to take an honest assessment of themselves. And I just see people stop being self-critical even of themselves. And me too. Like, that's my whole battle, is I need to continue to be self-critical of myself, because otherwise I pretend to be somebody I'm not.
Wow. That's a huge piece. Is there ever a little bit of a I'm not good enough in there too?
Story of our life, right? Like
Right.
I killed myself before, right? Unsuccessfully, right? What a weird thing that a person like myself, I can look back and tell a story from one lens of never feeling enough. Like, taking extra pairs of underwear to school with me as a child because people are always picking on me, giving me wedgies, and I have blood running down the inside of my leg because the underwear cuts my crotch. That's what I remember, right? That's my childhood. I had a great childhood. My mom and dad are amazing, right? In that sense. But that little child inside of me never, ever felt enough. And to the point where when I went to college, when I went from my small town Iowa world to my Alabama, like, I totally created a character, like a true fake character.
To survive.
And I lived as a fake human being with these ideas and thoughts that manipulated my actions. And then I took that same sort of, like, I left the civilian world and leapfrogged into the military, and it's like, okay, not enough. Like, I got to outwork people. I got to exaggerate. I got to be bigger than life. I got to be stronger, more tattoos, bigger beard. Like, it was a character through and through. I became an absolute fake fictional character that I had to then act out in this reality that, like, wow, I can't. What do I do with all of this? What do I do with this Navy SEAL skill that I can't go Navy SEAL anymore, right?
How much harder is it to get through the day and through life having to do all that extra work? I mean, what does that do to you?
Right? You already said it. It's like in my zest through life over the last, decade since I've been out, to try to make sense of the identity that I created. Like, what a severe identity. Like, I became, like, it's hard to use words that just make you sound like I became a really well-trained killer. Like that was my job. Like that.
Right.
And it sounds so stupid. It sounds like I'm not trying to be flamboyant. Like that's the truth of the matter. Like, and so when that job skill was no longer required for my life.
Now what?
Because here's the real fucked up truth, man. When I was having a bad day, I took it out on people overseas. Like imagine you're having a bad day in traffic and this thing you say to somebody who cuts you off.
Right.
Imagine being able to act out that impulse of rage.
I can't imagine it. Yeah, right? I can't. I mean, I can think about it, but I can't. I've never been there, and I can try and imagine, man. That's crazy.
9 years later, man, I'm still like, it's not like I'm not looking for, I am on the path of not having to be that guy anymore. And it's taken me 9 years to start sloughing that cocoon of rage, you know, like, and it's not like there was people that did way more killing than me, we'll say appropriately. Right.
Right.
I just had found myself in a group of men like-minded to me that were willing to go do the job that was really asked of us. And then understandably his political,
right.
that change, understandably should, right? Like I'm not begrudging that. It's like, hey man, can't do that anymore. Like this change. I'm like, no man, this is what I'm good at. Like, this is what my identity is.
That's the thing.
Yeah. And that's to this day, man. Like that's my struggle.
I think, look, for people that are paying attention out there, for other people that have come from a similar background than as you have, and you mentioned, hey, people have told stories and they've written books and they've been on podcasts and, you know, all kinds of things. There are a lot of people that haven't written books that are trying to give back and trying to serve in the community somehow, that have shared their story. And it's very similar to yours, very similar in terms of what they're dealing with emotionally, psychologically. I mean, we haven't even gotten into the physical piece yet. And I'm curious to know how you survived through that, where there's so many of your counterparts out there that are walking around basically crippled. Some of the most elite trained.
Like, I was there. There was a point in time where I could not physically walk. And I was 32.
Yeah.
I was in so much discomfort and pain.
Right.
That was like my path to opioid addiction, like severely, is like Nubane isn't in.
Right.
Nubane.
It's a wonder drug. Wonder drug.
And and here's the deal. At no point is me using those medicines anyone's fault but my own.
Sure. You made choices.
What they were supposed to do.
Yeah.
They curbed the pain. They allowed me to do X, Y, and Z. But subconsciously, I realized that it completely numbed my emotional state. It was like a time travel, man. Like I could take it and like forget for hours. And I, as a child who I never tasted alcohol until I was 36. I'm 44.
Is that right? Wow.
So
hold on. Time out for a second.
Yeah.
Jeff, how did you even make it through? How'd you get out of buds and then make it through not drinking? I mean, that's pretty much like that's what you do when you're not training. You're not
this conversation, right? Like I never believed in peer pressure. I've never understood that. Like maybe I'm a little bit on the spectrum or a lot in that sense. Like I certainly have plenty of emotion, but I don't believe in someone saying you should do this. I'm like, why? Like I'm going to do what I want to do, and I've always
Good
been,
for you.
You know. But in a flip side, it's not that simple. Every single male on my father's side was a raging, violent alcoholic.
Okay.
So
period.
my father
Right.
got away from it and wasn't an alcoholic, but I saw it. I scared the shit out of me as a child. I have memories of being scared to death and attributing it directly to alcohol. So that's the irony, right? Is like I had this real demon complex about alcohol. Like I was straight edge, man. And that's where a lot of the anger and violence came from because I had no outlet. And I started doing Muay Thai and things in college. And then I got to the teams and it was like, hey, this is what we do.
It's the ultimate outlet.
By people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I didn't drink not because it was any other thing. That's just I had a much stronger impression as a younger child. That's why.
And you made choices. You made different choices,
Right?
based on your experience.
That's where the fitness thing came in. Is like I really shifted into a more, in the same way that people will really diligently look forward to a Friday and Saturday to burn some steam. The gym always represented that to me. I didn't need it. I didn't need an outlet in that sense. The gym was really my thing. And so fast forwarding, that's the irony of now, like going into opioid addiction. It's like, wow, like like this kid that like never missed church until he was 23, right? Never drank alcohol. Came from a family that was like, my parents were truly happily married till my father died. Like I grew up in the Partridge Family, man. I really did.
I feel like I did the same. I got super fortunate, man.
And so now instead of, but the flip side, my wife is like, well, yeah, Jeff, like your family never told you no. College, people are too afraid of me to say no. I got into the teams and I was like, oh, no one's afraid of me, or like encouraging it because they have similar impetuses.
They're like you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't mean like, let me again say this blanket statement. These statements are my experience about me, not anyone else. I do not muddy in other people's experiences because I have my own. So, and I have 11 years of combat experience where all 11 years, I spent 308 days gone a year for 11 years. I wasn't hanging out. I was on deployment constantly.
You were working. Yeah.
So that was my conditioning. And so now it's about reconditioning. And that's where the fitness, the training has become something that was a hobby, that became a profession, that became a perspective, is my landing pad for peace and balance.
Yeah. I heard, what you're saying there about your individual experiences, and you're expressing yourself as an individual and the experiences that you had. There is something to be said about finding your tribe, though, and being able to kind of get lost in that tribe, but still have to have it be so tight. And it's interesting because I see that transition in your business. While I haven't visited yet, I've never, been on boots on the ground there. I can feel that coming through some of the stuff that you do, that you have a very tight-knit community there, and you're very passionate about the people you serve. And you're also very specific about who you want to serve and how you want to do that from a health, fitness, performance perspective. So given the context and the background that you just provided, maybe we shift into that a little bit. Talk to us about performance first. What is it that you and your wife are doing out there? Who is it that you're working with? Why is it that they're coming to you? You can start and finish wherever you want there, man.
Yeah, we again, this was performance first as a name and an idea came from when I left my previous business. I had another gym here in town, and our target demographic was young athletes and whatnot. We got exposed to some veterans and working some of the rehab, but then we started getting people coming to the office asking like, hey, like, do you guys prepare people for buds? And I was like, no, we don't. Like it's nothing I ever really considered doing. But
really, man, like never crossed your mind.
Because here's the thing, like, here's the truth. If we're being honest, when I got out, my head, I was only thinking someday I will be considered one of the best strength coaches in the pro world. And that was my only goal. I could be doing that real easily right now. And that's not a standpoint of ego, but there's plenty of job openings within the spec war world, within the pro athlete, that I've either turned down or could take.
Okay.
And so in my head, I didn't want to be the ego. I didn't want to be attached to the New York Yankees, the Giants, and be their strength coach. I wanted to be the guy like a Pete Bomarito out of South Florida, where if you're the top college athletes in the world, that's where you go to train for NFL Combine. I wanted to be another version of that.
Gotcha.
And I wanted to do it in baseball and wrestling and mixed martial arts. That's what I wanted to do. And so for me, I had this big facility with all this staff, and me coming in like a king and being a total piece of shit, really.
Sounds great. Great.
That's the reality. Is my thoughts of success were something really grandiose and awful. Now, certainly with the help of my wife, Really, like I can train people, but I can't make a viable business without my beautiful wife. Like it's just not possible. But my thing is in our thing, we look at, I can now, without a whole lot of judgment, look back at the person that I was in 22, 23 years old when I came in, 24, 26, when I started getting experiences. I want to look back, and I can very much recall the fire inside of me, that intuitive want to be like, man, the baseball thing didn't work out quite well, but I'm in position to make my way to the top tier, to be I got it, man. I was like fucking master breacher, lead man, point man for Red Squadron for a bit, for my fire team. Like I made it, man. I was there. I was catcher for the New York Yankees. Like,
right.
And with the job it is now, though, like I recognize that. I recognize people's deepest intuitive desire to serve. And you go like, well, it's like in the same, I say to guys, I joke, I go, you love your mom and dad, right? It's a reach. Some parents do it, kids don't. And like someone's like, yeah, I love my mom, whatever it is. I'm like, prove it. And they're like, totally, like, what do you mean? Like,
right.
In the same way, this same depth of conviction and the same truth you want to serve. You can't even understand it. Like you're being compelled, like you're being drawn into this service. Like it's stronger than anything. So strong that you would self-destruct. So strong that you would give up family, give up a job, give up a profession. You'd walk away from a PhD opportunity to go serve. I did that. And I see people all the time walk through that door, which is the complete opposite of sport, right? You get 10 to 15% that are just hair on fire committed. 20 to 30% are pretty committed and high on talent. The rest are just talented. And that's not a disrespect. It's just the reality of what it is. Right. 95% of the people that walk through that door are just like me, angry, driven, and willing to sacrifice their own life to get what they want. And it's not a cliche, because the reality is there are people out there that would happily die for this country and its people, and I would do it a million times over without regret, right? If there is such a human action. That's the people that walk through our doors, right? You and I both know intuitively, I mean, like we're sitting in this world in 2023 going, man, we could have done without 20, 21, 22. Not because there's not value in it, but we see the suffering.
I feel like I could have got value somewhere else in a different way, man. I always find that somewhere in what happens, right? It's not happening. What do they say? It's not happening to me. It's happening for me. And I'll take that for the years that you just mentioned. But at the same time, I feel like I could have learned some lessons in a different way.
So through all that suffering, right? And then you recognize that people can see the same suffering you do, but they see it at 23 like you did. And I say suffering, I mean, when I came in, if you were to ask 23-year-old Jeff why you serve, I'd have been like, there's just something, it's something bigger than me. I'm like being called for this. But I really want to do it. I want to serve. It wasn't a patriotic thing initially. Yes, I was a very proud American in that sense. You bet. I was raised in a very good way for my mother, Catholic. So I had a very sense of like onward Christian soldier idea about me too. And it's true. It was a very loving, truthful piece of who I am in my past. But I see it coming through my door. And I'm like, oh man, like you're going to get exactly what you're looking for, man. Just like I did. But so back to performance first, what do we do is, like I look at the physical side and say, hey, there are some missing components, real basic stuff. Let's really understand some basic physiology with the push-up, the pull-up, the sit-up.
Right.
Because here, like we already said the name, like P. Bomarito, it's like if you need to have a better 40 or a better vertical, you're going to go to these individuals and they're going to teach you in the same way you see a basketball player go to the free throw line. No matter where they're at, the same dribble, breath, shot happens. The same
skills,
skill development, right? The same mindset development, the same we call skill acquisition and and like flow state development. So I look at things and go, let's make sure we can do the basics first.
Peel back the layers of that onion. Yeah.
Then it becomes an evolution, right? An evolution evolves from the physical to some complex movements. But really what ends up happening is through this truthful, profound physical exertion that they've had prior to coming in here, and then they see me and they see my wife and they begin to have authentic engagement of conversation. And they realize like, oh my God, like my wife cracks them open. Is like, you see, this is all linked to your emotional state.
Whole different sense of awareness. Different sense of awareness.
Because here's the deal, man. Like, we get so many guys come in from sport and we go, hey, how do you know, like, let's use baseball, off my background. How do we know that in baseball, the swing came together? Like, we don't feel the ball when you hit the bat. Like, so what are you actually trying to chase? It's a reproduction of a physical movement that gives you a physical sense, gives you a feeling. Mm-hmm. A proper bench, someone that breaks the world record in the bench press, they're getting that feeling every rep they can in training.
Right.
Every rep in with the firearm, I know, like, as soon as that trigger goes, right, and that slide goes, you're like, that 3 o'clock left, or that right in the middle, man. How do we know?
You just know.
It's a feeling. Right. It is a rehearsed, dressed feeling that has value, and those
can be measured.
Yeah,
all the other stuff can be measured. Yep.
Yes, and it's like, how do we know that's measured? Because that mechanical device that's linked to your arm is acting in repetition. So why is your bench press not acting in repetition? Mm-hmm. Because in the military, nobody does it better objectively, learning. Like the special forces, hey, learn skydiving. Here's the objective rules. Don't screw it up, you die. Here's a demo. Don't screw it up or you're going to kill everyone. Here's the range, tap, rack, bang. Whatever it may be. It's like, here's your bench press. Here's your push-up. How is it that we put a man on the moon in 1969 and no one in our military knows how to do a biomechanic push-up? Why? Right? We can talk. You have people fucking till they're blue in the face talking ballistics.
All day long.
Are you 9mm versus 45? Well, you know what? Doesn't matter when you put it right there.
Yep.
The 22 rim fire works just as good as a 50 cal. I've seen it and I've done it. So
we're not practicing. We're not practicing the skills. It's not repetitive.
The podcast and reading a ton of books, right?
Right.
But we are not. Society has put so much value on the intellect,
right?
And that's wrong. It's the intuition, right? We have got to take our intellect and drive it in the intuitive space.
So that they meet. Yes.
Yes. And where can we do that? We can't do that. Usain Bolt can't do that in the 4x1 finals. He's already in motion, right? You can't fix somebody in a PST unless they've addressed it in training. And why do we go through all those immediate action drills in the range? So when it happens in real life, we react with a predictable, reliable method that works and can be taught.
Right. Or as they say, everything defaults to your lowest level of training.
Yes.
And if you have not practiced that repetitively to be prepared for whatever that situation is, plus all the other external inputs that are going to be happening at that particular time, depending on what your environment, your particular action environment is, you can expect to default to whatever the lowest level is.
You bet. Right. It just keeps getting deeper. And that's where people don't want to invest their time, because when you get to a special operations unit, society says you're there, man, but you aren't.
Right. It's like the journey has just begun. There's other people you guys are working with. So you're talking about like the special operators as it relates specifically to your background, but there are other operators, or let's call them tactical athletes out there that I know you guys are working with, that in the world of LEO, the fire service, some of the federal agencies, and then so that's kind of like the broader spectrum. And when I look at it, then it's like, okay, so that's kind of the genres that are out there. Then there's all the nuance that goes down deeper than that. So depending on what agency you're in, what branch of service you're in, what area of special forces you might be moving into, there are very specific training modalities and very specific skill sets that you need to practice in order to pass these tests, to be proficient. But not only do that, prepare yourself for what's coming next. And So maybe you could talk a little bit about that as well, because it's not a one size fits all. And I hopefully people are getting that from what you're saying, and what I'm listening to you talk about. It's not and while you do have training programs, those training programs have to be very much based on the individual. So that's a lot, but maybe we could kind of dig into a little bit of that right now, because the nuance that you talk about, I think that's, unless you've reached a new level of awareness, that nuance gets lost with people. And that's what I really respect about you, man, is you being able to talk about the in-between stuff that people want to scoot past, or just give me the answers, Jeff, man. Just tell me what I have to do to win.
Yeah, and that's part of the assessment too, is like when we get people that act that out, like that behavior, like just give it to me. Like it's one of two things. They're extremely, extremely intellectual and really need to move past it. And that's a rarity. Or it's just really someone like that behavior is someone trying to mask their insecurity. That's really what it comes down to. And that's what I mean is like, when I got to Dev Group, what I experienced for the first time was like the individual jobs and everyone wanting, like the EOD guys. The EOD guys didn't want to be SEALs. They wanted to be the best EOD guys. The SWIC guys, those guys didn't want, that's what I realized is like there's this level of professionalism that does exist. Like across the board, man. Like I got to work with all the people, all the augments, all the people that supported us were the best. And it was like, oh, it can happen, right? And so I step away from it, and especially in the law enforcement side, because I don't have any experience as an actual law enforcement officer. But I do look at it like my closest friend has been a police officer now for 27, 28 years here, and is highly decorated and is the part. He's only like one of 280 people in his department. They're like really like there's a few, right? But
he has his own experiences. He has his own experiences, right?
Right. And the truth is we're talking about these levels and these layers. And these levels and layers exist because at each level and layer, you have outliers. You have meat eaters. You have, like Dana White says, man, if you're even slightly a meat eater nowadays, you're just going to run like your kids are. In 15 years, they're just going to run through a profession because everyone's a pushover. Everyone's crying. Everyone's whining, and everyone said that about my generation too. And some of us got through with not being a big pussy, right? And that's the thing is people are so very unhappy at every level, it seems like, right? Like I look at law enforcement at the patrol side, and it's like you have some real outliers, but then you have they just seem to be unhappy and unhealthy. And you're like, why is that? And like you look at the infantry side of our military, it's like same thing, man. Like you just see this underlying unhealthy being, and I think that this is kind of my point is because I see it all up and down throughout the departments and every single agency. I see it in Australia. I see it in the UK because we interact with those coaches all the time and they're having the same issues. But where those issues of we need to make change, where you have to insert and make change, right? This is where the issue lies. In the 1980s, there were no strength coaches, right? In college.
Right.
Oh, they're everywhere.
Right.
Like, what do we do? Like everyone in 1984, when Boyd Epley was hired by Nebraska, everyone thought he was out of his damn mind.
Right.
Like, why would we ever right now so the point is our military, this is someone, Mark Stevenson said this to me, he goes, our military in its way that looks at health and wellness and strength coaches and dietitians, it's the same way the NCAA looked at it in the 80s.
So, wow, so far behind.
Okay, like why? Because our upper leadership in law enforcement and in the military need to go away. Why? Yep. Not just because they're around, but they were chosen based on compliance, not competence. And so what you have is you have people that have been positioned as a leader. Your police chief is hired by city council that have absolutely no experience in law enforcement. So they're injected into this leadership position. And then you have this person that has no competence as a law enforcement officer, let alone in physiology. And they go, hey, your guys are dying at a crazy rate. Heart disease is through the roof. workman's comp is spending $6 million a year in back pain and blood pressure medication.
Right.
Numbers that are ridiculous, but they're probably fairly accurate. So what goes on, right? What's happening is you have a lot of guys like me and younger that are now being educated from a point of real wisdom and knowledge. They've got to work their way up through the system and start stiff arming the leaders that just want to lead men instead of actually lead character. And there's got to be enough enlisted men that have enough rapport with their senior officer leadership to collude and go, we've got to do better.
Better, yeah.
There's not enough E7s and E8s yet. There's a whole bunch of E4s and E5s, right? But the problem still lies the fact that your leadership at the military level is being selected by a congressman, right? That's what's happening. And so our police chief, same thing, being selected by some angry mom or dad, whatever, right?
Right, city council somewhere. Yeah.
So I say, hey, Jeff Nichols in no way, shape, or form can affect the leadership, but I most certainly can affect the bottom push. And we just need to billow up and build up enough competent senior enlisted guys or young men and women through our military and law enforcement to what? It's going to make the leadership look even more inept.
Yep.
Then maybe,
then some change.
Right. Just maybe if it's so obvious that they're that inept, then maybe that would force change. But I don't see any other mechanism. And it's not me begrudging it. I think it's always been this way. It's just now with social media, we know it.
You're right. It's very, very in our face on a daily basis. I think, you said something there about stats, and I can't quote the stat, but it's a high percentage of law enforcement officers that don't live like past 2 years past their retirement age because they're dying of heart attacks or some other metabolic disease. And, there's a lot of talk, and this is not to take away from what does exist, the realities of how stress impacts the body, those cumulative stresses over time. But going back to what you're saying, these are older people that are retiring that didn't have or didn't prioritize their health and wellness. And I say health and wellness, fitness being part of that, their entire career. Maybe they went to the gym, lifted some weights, they got stuck in some linear type of program, and, they kind of looked good in the uniform or whatever else. But at the end, they didn't take care of themselves. And that's a very few. I mean, when we look at what our leadership looks like when it stands up in front of, the pulpit and on TV or whatever, and this is at the municipal levels, the state levels, and at the federal levels, it doesn't look so hot. And these are not incredibly old people. They are advanced in age, but they are not incredibly old people, yet they're some of the most unhealthy people that we see, and they're leading these folks that that we're talking about now. So this focus to try and change the groundswell, try to create a groundswell from the bottom. You're doing that in a few different ways. I mean, you have the gym, the business that people can physically walk into, but you're also trying to do this through, giving people access to you sort of through online programming. Can we talk just kind of how you've got yourself structured there so people can make some sense of this? And I want to preface this with, when I go to your website, and I look at things, I guess what I want is for people to hear this. I don't care where you are in your journey. Performance First has something for you if this is the pathway that you want to take, and this is something that you can use there's programs in there to test yourself, to recognize where your deficiencies are, where your limitations are. But I think what I'm getting from you listening to you now, which I didn't get before, was it's also going to test your mettle. Right? It's going to test, is this really something you want to do? Because if it's really something you're going to want to do, you're really going to have to commit to this, because all the bad things are going to rear their ugly heads if you're not committed to this. And I sort of throw that out there because, again, what I'm picking up from listening to you is the passion, the underlying passion for making this right for people is even in front of the training. I imagine the training at some point might even get a little bit boring for you at this point. That might be, maybe I'm a stretch. Right. You know what I mean? But that's what I'd like to hear a little bit more about is this. How are you doing this? How are you reaching people? And talk to maybe about some of the successes that you're seeing.
Yeah, there's a couple avenues which because ideally we get to work with you in person, right? Everything's scalable, we'll call it, and everything has a cost, because I don't believe in doing work for free when you're,
it's business, man.
Good at it,
Yeah.
I call it boastfulness. We are extremely good at what we do, and we're very proud of that, because we stay in our lane. And that lane is kind of where I'm leading to, is that, ideally we can work with you in person, and that 6 week or that week or those couple days we work with you, it's a lot of that is just, it's assessment, seeing you as an individual, and like, hey, this is what I see as a coach. Absolutely go do these things. Keep focused on what we talked about, like, the mechanics of your movement. Like, that's awesome. We can send them off. And then the programs, the online programs we sell online, kind of have a different face, because the way I coach, the way we speak, the way my wife coaches, it lends itself to very, very concise directions, right? So, we can train in person. Awesome. We have basically a membership side that all the exercises that are listed on our programs, there is an example on a membership side. So that way, the biggest thing with leadership I've learned in my time in life is that accomplishing a goal is a two-way street of understanding, like, hey, this is what I owe you and this is what you owe me. Mm-hmm. Like, I owe you a good program, and that good program has expectations that you're going to move a certain way. That's what I expect out of you. So now here's the web membership website. So if you're saying, how do I do a squat properly? I go, this is it. So you can hold yourself accountable, because we coach from our math only works from this platform. It's the same thing in ballistics. If I'm doing, a distance, right, and I'm looking at my muzzle velocity and all these sort of things, well, if I change the distance, that's
everything changes.
Impacts the ballistics. So
everything else changes. Yeah.
Reps are constantly changing. We can't measure that. And it's useless, right? And so anything that's reproducible can be measured. Because if we're dealing with a squat, as an example, gravity's not changing. The mass of the bar is not changing. There's only two things that can change.
Right.
Distance you cover. So if your squat is always changing distance.
Your mechanics.
Mm-hmm. Right? And then the speed in which you cover that distance.
Right.
That's unless you live in a different planet, and you don't have to adhere to the physics here on this one, you should probably follow a program that's math-based, because every single Olympian that's won a gold medalist in a skill sport has done math to get there. That's how you do it. So it's like, wait a minute, like, because the PST, a push-up, is a standardized movement. So is a sit-up. So is a given distance in a run. Like, because if you said, like, what are the distances in track and field? It's a mile, it's a 4. Well, what if the 1.5 miles was a distance? How would they write that program? It'd be extremely similar in its minutia as a mile or a 4. So
sure.
Why is it that you go to the Navy, or you go to a recruiter, or you go to someone that's training someone for spec war, and you're like, what are you running? Like, we're just running hard. I'm like, well, what are the best track coaches in the world doing? They're running off reverse splits. Why aren't you? Well, track athletes are pussies. They're not bud students. Like, yeah, but we're running here. Like, at no point in buds, at no point in SFAS, in no point in Air Force PJ Pararescue Combat Control School, and at no point in MARSOC selection, and then I could say at no point in your careers will you ever be exposed to strength and conditioning training or exercise physiology classes. So that's the other side, is like, where are all these Navy SEALs that are putting out fitness information? Because where did they get it? They certainly didn't get it inside. And so that's where I'm like, okay, we have a whole bunch of former Navy SEALs lying to you. And I have a problem with that.
That's interesting.
Call it what you will, but I'm not, like, I'm a master naval parachutist, free fall jump master, but by no stretch of the imagination should I be teaching parachuting.
Teaching it. Yeah. This crosses so many lines for me. I see, by the same token, I've never had any prior military or LE experience, firefighter, or anything like that. I just have what I have, and those are my own experiences in the world of health and fitness and performance training. And again, one of the things I find the most, fascinating, or what drives me to follow and watch you is again, the background that you had going into this. And it fries me when I see those that are like, that have the passion and the desire to serve. and have tried so hard or are trying so hard to do the right thing. They really are trying to do the right thing. They're not looking for the fast outlet. They're not looking for the cheap outlet. They're just looking for like, hey, give me a program that's going to help me be better on the day-to-day or help me pass this test or whatever. And they're giving their money to the individual that you just suggested there. And that's somebody that may be in the field with no performance training background. And I'm going to say this because I've been in this business long enough to know that even somebody that knows just a little bit can help somebody that knows nothing, right?
Okay.
So there's a little bit of like, is that altogether bad? I don't know. It depends.
It's just one half dozen the other, right?
It totally.
Because I can't, and here's the thing is like angry Jeff, like, right, I don't know someone's impetus. Like, I don't know like why they're doing it. But but I still go back and go, I'm pretty
right. Hands up.
Like, where did you learn this? Like, because
questions.
at the end of the day, it's being perpetuated that X Navy SEAL or current is selling exercise X. Where did exercise learn? Like where? Like, and I think that is like, because they're banking on exactly what I heard in first phase. No one is differentiating between a Bud student, a Navy SEAL, and a SEAL Team 6 operator. Like, is it society's job to do that? No, but it's the SEAL's job to represent the community in an authentic, truthful manner. Mm-hmm. Like, I wasn't on the Bin Laden raid. I got pulled off. I had to go somewhere else. Like, I absolutely could go around, and I have in my past. I have told someone in the past that I was on that raid. What an asshole! Like, again, that's why I'm not saying I am immune or never have done it. I just want to be, if I want to be known as somebody truly, just really wanting to be known as someone that's like, that dude actually really does speak the truth. It might not be super polished, but I really give a shit. Like, I really care. And in my caring, I probably say some things that are a little bit off color, but like, man, because here's why, like, I'm finally learning it. Weirdly enough, man, I accept people thanking me for service. But what comes with that thanking me of service is like, I really owe a debt of honesty to represent that thanks authentically. If you're going to thank me, then what I offer you is this is what I've given. This is what I've given the community and nothing more.
This comes back to the give and take and the responsibilities that the client and the coach have to one another, to the program, to the commitment to getting things done, and the respect level there. And at the end of the day, this being a business. Yep. And there's nothing wrong with being prideful about that business and or obviously asking for money for the services and the knowledge that you're providing. And, I think if anything, I'm going to guess that it upsets you, and it upsets me too. And I've been watching this thing happen for a long, long time now in the fitness industry, is watching some guys make a lot of fucking money, a lot of money on stuff that, again, is it altogether bad? Again, I think it depends. It just depends on who's paying you, how it's being applied, all of those things. But and this word gets thrown around a lot, and I don't love it. But I think what I hear you touching on is this concept of being authentic. Like, what is the truth behind all of this? What is the truth behind this particular program? What is the truth behind this product? Where is it coming from? How did we get here? And am I resting my laurels and hanging my laurels on one thing? You mentioned the Bin Laden thing, right? Like, because if that's what you need to get through and make money, this is going to be short-lived for you, and you can make a lot of money probably off of a story or a product or
stories.
Yeah.
Oh, like, and just leaving it at that. Like, I just like the money grab is real.
It's real.
It's a real thing for me. Like, what I've experienced as an operator observing and being a part of stuff. It's like, the Maersk, Alabama hostage rescue, I was there at it, in part. And it's like, I know for a fact where the movie was filmed because they had to drive through the set. They were filming on the road I lived on. Tom Hanks was there and all this stuff. I'm just like, I know for a fact that no one that was there consulted for it, but yet there's a movie and book, right? So like I just, as an example, right. But I think what it comes down to is like, yep, it's our programming. It's what we do. It's
Yep.
I really want to give young athletes an opportunity to experience what it would be like, and not hey, we often experience, no, like feeling, being around, like, because when guys show up, they're like me. Like, I grew up around a place that no one really understood. Like, what are you doing? Like, that sounds ridiculous. Like, nobody does that. Like, nobody pass. Like, it's just all doubt. You'll never play pro baseball. You'll never do this, right? I was inducted to the Baseball Hall of Fame in my state, and I became a SEAL Team 6 operator. Like, I kind of did it, right?
I did it. Yeah.
I did it in my way. But my point is like, in the end, like all of that, like baseball was what prepared me for military service, that impetus. And I look back and see that clear as day. It wasn't about baseball. It was about service to get me to this point. And so this point to me means that 22-year-old Navy SEAL wannabe Jeff Nichols type individual, 24, 26, 32, they're all the way through that. I want to give all of those beings that authentically want to serve a leaping off point from their life.
Right.
That they can jump into our training and they go, these two people really have my best interest in mind. And I'm experiencing it. They're not just
and you're feeling that. You're
right?
feeling that.
Getting the training, the physical training from me. And then my wife comes in and scoops them up and takes over their meditation work and takes their, like, baseball was good to me. The Navy was good to me. Coaching was good for me, but there's nothing in my life that I value more than my God, my wife, and what she's gifted me with meditation. It saves my life every day. And it continued to save my life. And that's gifting, because I always joke them. I tell them the first day they come in, we have a class coming on Sunday, and I'll go, hey guys, that's cool. You all came to see me. But every single one of you will be in tears in a couple weeks. And when you leave, you'll be standing there in line thanking my wife.
Right. It won't be because of me.
Every time that's happened.
Yeah.
They get it. And it's like, you had this really scared 23-year-old Jeff that knew how to work hard as anyone. But I was scared, fucking petrified of failure.
And that's what drove you. That's what was driving you.
Yeah, like I've had this exact conversation with Dan Gable. If you don't know who Dan Gable is, look him up.
Of course.
Commentary brands through the head strength coaches or head wrestling coaches at Iowa have had this, and same thing. They're like, what drove me was fear, right? And now I'm like, okay, cool. We got the fear base. Like, that's awesome. Anger and wrath are short to come. Awesome. That's a great tool. But that's not what some of these 23-year-olders, they don't need angry Jeff to be like, go on. They need someone to go, here's the training, and it's important. But this beautiful woman over here is going to share to you why it's so important and why this matters and why this makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, when you go through that trauma, this tool that you've been gifted will be ready for you.
Yeah. Imagine, here's my thing, is I'm looking and listening to both the programming that I've seen you put out and the things that I hear you talk about regularly on Instagram, because it's a huge platform for him, and you go longer form on that stuff, which is great, because it's not just one little simple post and trying to drop this knowledge nugget for people that's going to change their world. It's you're introducing them to concepts and to this authenticity that you're talking about, and that I'm feeling from you right now. Imagine if you had these tools and skills back, 20 years ago. Imagine how our police officers, how our firefighters, how our young military, people that are going in, how much better they would be at having this experience now, so that they could realize the experience they were going through while they were going through it, and whatever training, whatever, standards testing or boot camps or, basic training or whatever we're talking about, to be able to take care of themselves physically, spiritually, emotionally, in all of those ways, and also be able to connect with the people around them. So it wasn't always about like
they show up always thinking they're crazy, and then you're around 15 dudes, you're like, oh my God, I'm totally not crazy. And then the training environment goes,
right.
And then everyone's emotionally boiling over and like, my life matters the most. I had the roughest. And they go, no, man, like, you guys all had shit. And that's the unifying factor is like, man, like we're willing to work really hard and we've struggled to get here. Fuck yeah, man, we're on the same team.
Right. But that comparison game, man, the comparison, that is an evil bitch.
Yeah.
It tears everything apart, and it just stifles that progress. And it's I would say it is the murderer of authenticity. Because if you're constantly doing that, there is nothing authentic about anything that you're trying to complete or do. So maybe just a little bit on the training pieces. So when people are coming to you, and I guess this is a very broad question, so this could be very specific based on the type of individual and what they're specifically training for. I don't know. But what do you see as the biggest mistakes they've made? I mean, if you had to kind of rate it up there at the top, like what are the pitfalls or the mistakes that they've made coming in before they see you that you have to make them aware of, and for lack of a better term, maybe unfuck before moving forward, and before they've maybe really understand the commitment that they're trying to make or think they've made at this point?
Yeah, the biggest mistake that's super easy to clean up that gives immediate value once we can get through to them, it usually takes about 3 days because they're all like sniffing each other's ass and be like, hey, we're from different places, before they go, hey guys, you realize your team, you're not competing for a spot.
They're distracted.
Yeah, and so the biggest problem is that they've put so much effort into doing instead of the effort into doing accurately. We as a society have totally, completely screwed you over as a society by saying, just work hard, just forget everything, forget accuracy, forget skill. Like I can use buzzwords that people have as phrases, and I don't want to do that because they're good ones to use, but I don't want people to think I'm talking shit about somebody. You know, I hear you. It's like those buzzwords that people have on their t-shirts. That's him. That's you. It's like and let's do this. Then we'll go say Jocko, for example, like where it's like everyone knows he gets up at 4:00 or whatever it might be. It's like, and so there's emulation towards it. And you go, what does that mean? You're like, the dude's got his life together, and people are trying to emulate that togetherness. But by just doing the 4, I would venture to say that the 4 a.m. piece is a much bigger, true, intuitive statement to him than it's a time. No, an entire evolution of a commitment, right? And that's what people miss. They think that just this effort is going to get me there. What gets you there won't keep you there for sure. And that's the thing is like, you take all this effort and then you say, I don't do skill very well, so it becomes self-destructive. Well, I'm just going to work harder and say, fuck it. I don't care how bad it hurts. If you just learned a little bit and say, treat it like a firearm, treat it like a sport that you know, like you would never treat golf that way, right? We would never treat, hey, I have 15 rounds in my magazine. I can shoot it as fast as I can. And that's just as good as doing front sight focus squeeze drill. Like if people treated the same, that's how they treat the weight room. People treat, like you just go into a weight room and just watch people just slop around. And you're like, this dude's been slopping around for 3 years and he looks the same, using the same weights. It's like, that's not right. So accuracy that the military does so very well in its objective teaching and learning. There is nothing that improves all of that objective skill holistically, except for one thing. It's your physical preparation. Then we can say that physical preparation's origin is your mental state. But it's all after mental and physical. It encompasses everything. It makes you a better skydiver, better shooter, better communicator, better father, better husband. If, and that's the whole impetus of this New Year's resolution. It's hard. That's the point, right? and what's harder than anything? Do the unsexy consistently.
And slow the fuck down. Slow down. Don't try to win right now.
But once you, what ends up happening is with these guys, once they experience, I mean, because they've been toiling for months before they come. Usually, they show up, they hear us, and they're like, okay. They're really willing to learn, but you can still some guys that are like, kind of like, I'm still going to kind of do it my way.
Resistant.
But as soon as they switch into extremely high observational state, within weeks, they PR everything. Like, how could this be? You're like,
right.
Because you are already one of the hardest workers. You just decided to become accurate. Now you can actually objectively see it happen.
I love that. I love that, especially you brought up that other example about the, the 4 a.m. or 4:30 a.m. wake up or whatever it is, and it being it's this bigger part of a bigger thing, and understanding that not everybody's wired the same, man. Not everybody's wired like that.
That's like I'm the last person in the world to get up at 4 a.m. and work out at this point in my life.
Sure.
But I look at that and go, if I were to able to have a sit down conversation with Jocko, I would be willing to bet that it would be like something to the regard of that, like, he'd probably say something like, it's so important to me that it's me. I'm taking care of me, and I can't take care of my life and my wife and my family unless
I do that.
Make a point to do it. And it's like, I can't do it because I got kids in school and life stuff. It's like, and I love the peace of the morning. Because this is a conversation I have, and it's not at 4. It's usually at 5:30. And it's like,
it's the same thing for me, man. Yeah.
Right. And I really, really appreciate that approach. And I think that when people find that approach that they can appreciate, it's great. And fitness is a lot of times is a good starting point for that.
Yeah, I think, and people are trying to rush through it so quickly. They want to get to the sexy. You mentioned that word, and I use it a lot too. Like everybody wants to do the sexy shit. Nobody wants to do the basics. They want it now. That goes back to the beginning of our conversation. People. Society's made things too easy. They don't do hard things. They want it all. They want it now. So going into the performance programming, I asked you about like the biggest pitfalls they fall into. I wonder about how many people have, I guess, tried to rush through this thing fast. And you mentioned like they have to have a high level of intellect sometimes to be able to kind of push, for you to kind of maybe push them a little faster than the typical person. But I guess my point is when we look at kind of the models, and those models being based heavily around science, and you've got a lot of experience, and which has led to a lot of the nuance I think that you provide here in your programs. But when we look at the hypertrophy, strength, and then speed and power models, and how those things are stacked on top of one another, what is when these guys come to you, what is their basic understanding of those and how those should be applied, both in the short but in the long term? Because hopefully what you're getting is people to think about the long game. Obviously, there's the specific goal, passing the test, becoming, getting, moving to this next level, whatever it happens to be. But you got to, these are part and parcel. These are long-term things that you have to understand. Right. What is their level of that when they come to you at whatever point in their career?
And that's part of the experience, is because in order to get, we'll call it this is the textbook is going to say you need 6 weeks of development to get that neurological and physical development, specifically the neurology of it, right? So we do a 6-week course that we train guys 6 days a week here. They come from all over the country. They come from Australia last class. I think there's some coming from Sweden in the class.
Wow.
Here, right? So it's like we're getting people from all over. We're not getting them from Virginia Beach. It's odd. I don't train anyone here at all, really, except for like one person local. And I've trained 3 people local in 10 years here. We're a cancer. Like, we can't even get the recruiters to come visit. We can't.
Oh, yeah. You're just making them look bad.
We are the diseased. And more people come out of here, Special Forces, than anywhere else, any city in the world.
Imagine that.
Like, so getting back on, I look at it and go, the strength, power, and speed, it's a module. So the first 2 weeks, they experience the variety of what hypertrophy is. Hypertrophy is tissue remolding. It's tissue growth. So we go through those 2 phases in actuation. A week of tissue remolding, a week of growth. So they can experience what that feeling needs to feel like. What does that duress on a daily basis need to feel like when I'm working true hypertrophy? There's a feeling.
Do you feel like you have to slow people down, like they've been doing so much?
It's just because these guys are so wanting to see. Here's the difference, kind of, is these people, the folks that come in are just like you and me. They would be like, I need you to jump 13.3 inches every 14 seconds for the next hour. They will fucking do it. Like,
they'll figure it out.
To the point, like if I misspeak, Catherine's got to go, no, he meant this. Because I get talking and like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Like he meant
they'll do that.
And she's like, no, this is like, anyway. So the first 2 weeks, like, because what does hypertrophy lead to from an athletic standpoint? Most people don't know that. Hypertrophy leads you to the ability to come to a complete stop. It introduces you to strength. It introduces you to creating dynamic tension. So strength is about buildup of tension and release. Strength is heaviest mass moved over the largest distance, like a strong man. Like pick heavy object up, move it as far as I can, right?
Right.
If I pick it up once and set it down, that's absolute strength. So not strength endurance. So we have to learn, once we learn how to move, and that remolds and repairs tissue, that's hypertrophy. So it's the first 2 weeks is make sure they're moving. So why? Because week 3, they need to learn how to stop without recoil. Like they need to stick their landing. They need to demonstrate that they can create tension under dynamic load. That's strength.
Mm-hmm. And all planes and ranges of motion.
You bet, right? So we have to go range of motion, tissue remold, then we add tension and still move to that range of motion. And then we come to a stop and then recoil. That's power and speed.
That's the power and speed.
A mass's ability to come to a dynamic stop and change direction without losing energy. That's power and speed. So that leads into resiliency. That's how we know we have tendon and ligament strength. And that's how we know we're not going to break our legs when we jump off the back of a Humvee with 40 pounds of gear and we land on an uneven surface. Because I now have the tendon and ligament strength from working my power and speed module post-tension. So all this nerdery is real simple. If you are a human being, you are bound to these rules and laws of physiology.
Period.
Hypertrophy precedes strength, strength precedes power and speed. And then because this is how it goes, you get new tissue, new muscle. That's hypertrophy. You take your new tissue and new muscle and you give it strength, tension strength, so it doesn't tear. That's strength. And now we take that tension and we give it elasticity, durability. That's power and speed. And that is the human function. That is periodization. That is straight, simple biology 101. And if you don't adhere to that rule, it's a special individual that is like a world-class athlete that's got to do a peak and taper or whatever. Or you are human and you have to follow those modules. The only change is how long do I stay in hypertrophy? How long do I stay in strength? How long do I stay in power and speed? And that is where the education, where you're like, how do I get this? So by week 3, when they're in the midst of it, because now we're going, okay, these guys are going to have so many questions about programs. For 3 weeks straight, every day we talk programming, we go through the math. And so they learn in action how they're feeling, because here's the key to it all.
Yeah, you got what's on paper, and then there's what's going on elsewhere, yeah.
It all simply is the gain is this. We are going to stress you out more than you've ever been stressed out in your life, appropriately. Then we're going to teach you how to heal appropriately, and we're going to see how magnificent your human body is. And you're going to heal so fucking fast every day that you're going to go, holy shit, I can heal after you bet. Like, buds is not a problem if you know how to heal from extreme duress. But most people in extreme duress go, fuck it. What happens in duress? The first 2 things that happen biologically in duress is loss of appetite, loss of sleep. Wow, you definitely don't want to lose your appetite or get less sleep in selection, but it's the first thing that happens. So we do a sleep hygiene class. We bring in experts that are about to talk about sleep. We bring in people from all over the world that are experts in that field. I can talk about it, but I'm going to bring in the PhD who did her dissertation on it.
Yeah, so this, like the buds specifically that you're talking about, though, it's a game of attrition, and this goes back to what we were talking about before, or what you were talking about before, specific to, well, I'm just going to power on through. I'll just work hard. Well, not if you don't have fuel on board, not if your neural system is shut down, and not if you prepared your body, tissue. Forget the mindset thing, but you mentioned the resiliency piece, the being able to heal, because You're constantly emptying the tank. The way I understand it in buds, I've never gone through it. I don't know, but that tank may start as full if you're prepared properly for it, right? And it's constantly going backwards, and you're going to try to continue to fill. It's like trying to fill your gas tank while you're driving down the road, and it's never back to full. It's just how can we slow the process to empty down before it gets to empty? Because once it gets to empty, you're getting rolled out, right or wrong.
Because here's the bananas part, Scott, you're right. But here's the really cool part too. Is after all of my experiences, and then like in second phase where you're constantly breathing pure O2. Pure O2 has a really, really magnificent healing state.
Yeah, totally. It's like
if you know how to do actual meditative breathing and you're in second phase and you can utilize that pure O2, like there's all these things. So like US Ski and Snowboard, the head of physiology there for a long time is a Dr. Jim Straight Gunderson. And he was pumping, if you go into the racks in Park City, the US Ski and Snowboard where the squat racks are at, there's pure O2 into the racks. So your recovery is hitting pure O2 for a reason, so it's like, there's all these sport hacks that are used.
I was just going to say it's like a hack, but it isn't a hack. It's human biology.
Experience, I'm like, wait a minute, pure O2. And so we teach this to our guys. And so now we have people, we've had multitudes of guys now have gone through selection with these little nuggets, and like their experience is way different than their peers. Because they're utilizing, we're teaching these guys, like talking about a real common problem in buds is SIPE, right? Is pulmonary issues, right? From fluid in the lungs.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Proper breathing, a real breath pattern, really understand breathing that my wife teaches, right? Like from a real meditative state, we could do box breathing, HRV, all of that. But when someone can experience it real time and prove it through biological testing, go, you're in it, you're in a flow state. See, it's happening. When you enter that, and then we start adding certain modalities like drive into Chula Vista, drive into the Chocolate Mountains for 2 minutes. Now you're in a low humidity, high sun environment, which is ideal for breath work when you have SIPE. And then we add anti-inflammatory food to it, right? Now we're really talking about cellular inflammation problems that aren't an issue, because that's a real pulmonary issue for the lungs. So we teach that. So we've got guys that have had SIPE, and we go do this. And they show up to medical 3 days later, like, where's your SIPE? I'm like, I got
what happened?
So we keep doing
not through meds, and they're not, not having to do.
Like NSW is oblivious to it because no one in NSW is qualified to be doing this. And I mean at the leadership level.
I hear you. Yeah, I hear you.
It's not most people don't know this. That's why the unique side of like, hey, like. You should listen, not because I have a loud voice, but because in the world of high performance, this is it. That's it. This little nugget on this day, or this little nugget on this day, or when you're diving, or when you're in first phase, or when you're in third phase, this is what you should like. There's all these experiences that are like hardline physiology problems that no longer are hardline physiology problems. Once we go, you're going to encounter this in first phase. And when you do this, this, and this, and they do it, and they're like, everyone else is getting sick and I'm not.
So this goes again, I just keep reaching back to the beginning, and you having the experience, not just going through this experience, the training experience itself, but then coming out and working with these guys at the level in NSW. And you talk about having a loud voice. Well, is it loud, or it's just like, hey, man, like this is what I was doing. This is what I've continued to do. I'm just not doing it and collecting a paycheck from the government anymore. I'm doing it on my own. What does it take, man? Like, does it just take, you got to graduate, quote unquote, graduate 100 more people from your program to go through
that's the human. That's the weird.
You're a data guy. You're a data. You're like, hey, what are the numbers, man? What do I need to meet here to turn the table?
On that road, like I've really been. That's one of my big struggles as that. I'm not like the thing, and one of the things in which I'd love to change about me is that sense of like I want to be. I want that wanting, that clinging, that avert. Like every time I do it, man, I just like smother it. And I'm like, and that's where like my wife is, God bless her. her level of tolerance and I don't know how she does it, but that's why it works. Cause it really, man, like the last thing this world needs is another one of me. Right. And I don't mean that in a self-deprecating way. The world doesn't need a bunch of angry, tattooed up veterans. What we need is a bunch of compassionate, educated, mindful warriors that really will change the world because they're willing to stand for truth above all else. Not consistency. Truth above consistency, and that's a hard thing to sell when consistency pays the bills and consistency gets you rank and consistency keeps you in the game. And it takes a real special person to stand up and go, hey man, like we need to take a look at what we're doing because we can do better. And that's the point. Are the SEAL teams screwed up? No. Are the Rangers screwed up? No, like certainly not at the service level. Those men and women, man, I have more appreciation for them, especially in law enforcement. Like I love it. I love them, but I love them with like a sense of I expect a lot out of you, and they do themselves too, and I. That's where the hope lies for me. Because we are getting that. Like I get traction for me is not compliance and do what I say. We get people graduating every other week or so. We're gonna have a bunch of guys graduate from Bud's class here, and like their last week is next week.
Okay.
We trained a bunch of them. Successes for me is when they go through, because we just had someone visit. There's two, like Christmas break happened, and guys are in the middle of third phase. There was 2 weeks left of third phase, and they ought to go on leave. So one of the guys stationed out here visited his dad, came through, and he's like, got 2 weeks left. And I'm staring at a man who was as certain that he was going to make it through standing there as when I met him. Just like me. Like there are some guys that walk through that door, I go, I would bet a pound of flesh on this human. And he was one of them. And for whatever reason, I can sense it. Not all of them.
Okay.
But that for me is to stand there and see this guy, and like I can ask him questions like, hey man, like explain to me how this feels, because all I know is how it made me feel. And when they explain back to me that same sense of truth, I'm like, that's why I do it.
All right, that's the win.
Yeah, man. Like I've been telling them all along, like you can fucking do this. Like you really are enough. And it's important that you want to do this because not many people are going to go do this. And they go through it and you're like, I'm not patting them on the back. I just look at them and go, see, you are the only difference between me and the 11 guys that we're going to start training on Monday is, well, there's two things. Some won't choose to do it, but the only difference is time. Because 15 years from now, some of those guys are going to be looked at the way that I am to go, hey, so-and-so former Navy SEAL, I need your help. And that's our condition. Our condition to them is you need to identify people that need what you have as a young. And your job is to give them enough leeway to educate them and mentor them. You don't have to hold their hand.
Right.
Someone needs you. You be there for them, whenever that may be, And I think that's the value. That's the message us veterans need to be going about. Is not, yes, I was an angry veteran, but I think that we've done a real disservice to the people that are now. It's like, who wants to serve? And I think that as us veterans, we need to go, okay, despite some of the things I want to look back and gripe at,
be mad about still.
My time in service was really blessed. And I got to serve in a capacity that I look back and go, everything I wanted to go do and wish for, boy, I got it. And I can't imagine spending the years in the military that some guys do. Yeah, most avoid deployments, but the ones that spend a lot of time in and don't get them, I mean, my heart breaks for them because that's why I came in. And so I look at these guys now and I'm like, I love what I do because it's the most truthful thing I've ever been a part of outside of like married to my wife and the meditation piece that is so enriching my life. And if it hadn't been for my wife and the meditation that I love so much, I wouldn't be able to stand here and be truthful.
You mentioned the mentorship piece and taking care of one another. In a way, doesn't mean you're coddling them, right? It means you're taking care of them, you're mentoring them, you're helping them to understand, but also holding them accountable to the expectations, and then asking them to check in. And then you mentioned the I guess the community at large of veterans, and a lot of them are angry. A lot of them are just, there's a lot of, and this I see this across all, LEO, fire service, first responders, just in general. There's a constant eating their young or eating their own, right?
Yeah.
It's, you're not good enough back in my day, or, like we're talking shit because we're pissed about something, or they have something that we don't have, or I don't have. And, you mentioned a little bit of that before, and just the hiding behind the insecurity. We have there are so many vets out there, like now. I mean, in the last, we have more the most highly trained war fighters that we've had in this country in the entire history of our country.
You bet.
Right now, that I believe so many of them want to give. They really do. They just don't know how to do it.
Right.
And they haven't had the mentorship, and they are discouraging those young people that do have a desire, or at least maybe or bordering on the edges of potentially joining the service or joining LEO or whatever. And it doesn't look like a really great prospect right now. And there's a lot of these angry people that aren't helping that. They're not helping that cause. And you just mentioned all the value that you extracted from your experience. Yes, it comes with baggage. It comes with consequence. That is part of the deal. But what can the community at large do better, right? And again, you can't answer for everybody, but what can they do better to maybe change that stigma and stop with the nonsense of just talking shit all the time? Because to me, it's just a lot of wasted energy. It's really off-putting. And I look at it, I find it to be really sad, because I feel like those people still have so much to give. They just don't have a way to do it. Is there a way to bring it together?
I think that for me, I can only speak for myself, is like my chief complaints come from poor leadership, from all aspects of, like, whether it's the only place I can say this, I have zero complaints about my time in service of actions on target with team leaders, troop chiefs, and anything that happened in real world combat in truth. Like I worked and lived with the best and most decorated war fighters in the history of our military. Like, for the unit that I was with, it's the most decorated war fighting military unit in the history of modern warfare.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I witnessed it for 8 years, man. Like and my point of bringing that up is that my chief complaints are leadership stuff stemming from a lot of administrative stuff. Yes, there was a lot of admin stuff in my world, but we were very much a tactical oriented organization, right? And I know that, not every rate, every MOS obviously has that. And so my empathy only goes so deep. You chose to join the military. Like, now I'm not so much, but anyone that would complain about joining the military for any reason, especially when it comes to combat, baffled me. It's like, you joined the military in time of war, dummy. Like, what did you think was going to happen? Like,
right.
So now that, yes, war, where are we at? Like, there's always conflict, right? But I think that that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a real lull. And so when we have real war fighters in a lull, we have a lot of like undermining of attitude, I think. And I think that that's a natural state. And I think that what we were experiencing in the military, I didn't experience this, but this is the same thing. I didn't experience the NCAA in the 80s either. But I did experience, like, change. I did, and I could see it happening. But I also want to say to people, like, you almost got to wait this out a little bit, right? There's going to be another war, and it'll be around the next election. Like, that's my opinion. Like, I'm going to make that statement because that's what I see. I see the same thing that I saw now, but just in a different lens. So war's coming, right? Don't worry, it's coming, right? Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and all them got to get their billions too, so it's coming.
They got to make money. Yep.
So it's coming, right? And so what we need to be prepared for is this, and this is the scary side. You've already mentioned it. The reason why this country is safe isn't because of our LE, with respect to our really good law enforcement officers. It's because of our veterans, right? It's because of people like me and people like you and people that are willing to like, hey, I have a mouth, but I'm going to stand behind it, and I'm going to stand behind it within my tribe. I think that what we see now is the same thing we saw in post-Vietnam. We saw a lot of water fighters. We got out, man. Like I had to get out. If I had stayed in, man, I probably wouldn't be alive for sure in some stupid behavior. And guys get out, right? And who stays in? People that really have nowhere else to go, maybe, or don't have a lot of initiative, and they're settled in and they become leaders. Because it's military leadership, from my experience, like high-end military leadership is what's left, not what's best. So we're seeing a real low end of that. And now when our country decides to pull that little string called patriotism, and we start a war, then we're just going to flood all these young 18 to 20-year-old, 2-year-old kids that are just like me, really need a place to go, grew up with that onward Christian shoulder mentality, very patriotic, brainwashed to the hilt of like, you're the best and go protect this land kind of situation. And that's what it's going to take. And it's going to take, I have a tremendous amount of reverence with the samurai class. That's 6,000 years of absolute war fighting. It created, yes, tons of violence and tons of tragedy, but it also created the greatest minds in the spiritual world, the intellectual world, and it has the greatest fighters in the history of that genre. And I think that that's exactly what we're experiencing on a big, let me draw back what's going on. What we end up seeing now is this real awareness. We see so many people aware of the situation that they spurn from, right? And they look back and go, whoa, like, I want the people to follow my footsteps to have a better opportunity. And we're sharing these intuitive ideas, not just intellectual ideas. We're sharing our experiences through podcasts, through in-person coaching, through mentoring. And what we're going to end up having is this real sense of awareness and awakening as a big country, when there is something that happens that is going to unify us, right? Not a virus that really perpetuates a ton of fear and creates separation, we'll say, but there's going to be a social situation that's potentially going to unite us, whether those origins are authentic or not. The point is just like me, like, I'm not angry at the things I was asked to do anymore. I did those in truth. I served with a capacity of honesty, integrity, patriotism, Christianity, and an upbringing that was built on protecting this country and family that I love. That doesn't go away.
Right.
It gets bolstered with truth. And then it gets bolstered with experience. And I think that that's what we really need to offer people is my experiences, although I've had some bad, like you said, but man, on the flip side of that, I could have never, ever appreciated this world for its good had I not served in our military. And our military to this day, because of its people, continue to serve me as a person because they give me a ton of hope.
Wow. That was more than I expected, man. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head so many times in just that little piece. I would agree on a lot of levels. Again, I cannot relate in a lot of the same ways you or others like you can, but I can agree because I do understand that it often takes something extraordinary or extreme to bring people together. And it's interesting to see, you joined up, I think you joined the military in 2002, correct?
I did, yes.
Yeah, so we think back to like 9/11, and I know exactly where I was in my life and at that time and how I felt, what I was feeling. Those people that know my personal story and the struggles that I had in not joining during that time, my reasons why, and all of those things, and regrets and all of that stuff. What it did do is it did instill a new sense of what really is important and how you need to look out for your brothers and sisters. That you might not like everybody and you might not agree with everything that they say or do, but there is a way to come together. And I think we've seen that before, and I think we'll see it again as well. And it is unfortunate that it will likely take something similar in order for that to happen again. So I appreciate those sentiments. I really do.
I say this as like, I'm really authentically not trying to be negative in that sense. Like I don't see war the same way as a lot of people. I don't see what's going on in a war setting as unhuman. Like I have a different lens now, and because of my experiences, and I'll say that like for what it's worth, and it may not mean anything to anyone, but whatever state of my being is when I leave this body, the thing I'm probably most looking forward to in my own human imagination, if it's a thing, right? Like, what does the afterlife look like? Who knows? But
Yeah.
I'll pretend that I have some sort of say in it.
I gotcha.
I'm looking forward to thanking the people whose lives I took.
That's awesome.
Not in the sense of like, hey man, like no, like not the same, but the same. If you know, some people do this. If you're a hunter, and you take the life of that animal and you kneel next to it, and you have real conversation with it, and a real belief system around what it's offering you, and that is truth, and that is divine, and that's about as honest as I can be about the people whose lives I've encountered who are no longer here. I feel very, very blessed now to have the opportunity to look at that truth from a different lens, because that's the truth that I decided to nearly take the life of myself. In that sense, I had a hard time growing up the way that I did, authentically in a very healthy Catholic setting, was a very healthy Christian setting, and my whole life being told that there are some unforgivables, and then experiencing those unforgivables to a multitude that I did. I'm so thankful that my soul got drugged through that nonsense, that nightmare, that low point, because like I've never really cared, never really, this sounds terrible, man. Like I've never really cared for people. I've never had a value of life to include my own.
It doesn't sound terrible. It sounds honest to me.
But there are things in my life that I don't see it within my capacity to end my own life anymore. Honest, I don't. There are times I've had some low times, right? As we all have, and that's where I choose to meet people. I say that as like I've had some low times, and that's where I choose to try to. And not that I'm getting a deep conversation with people I've never met, but like this is,
Right.
We spend 6 weeks with these guys. I tell them that after they like on the morning of the second day, I tell them my life story. I was like, this is the truth, man. This is the child that I was, that had these ideologies, that created a character in college, that did these things in truth through patriotism and service. But on the back end, the thing that was my root being of everything is my God. And I was raised that way, in a way, right? And so I had to face that. At some point, I didn't. This is my job. It's like, but at some point, for me, I had to face that, like at the deepest truth. And I'm so thankful that God gave me the strength to have that, right? Like that I had enough care for myself or willpower for myself to go through it, like to literally endure that depth of hating myself, trying to discover if I was going to hell or not, right? Or being a sinner or whatever you want to call it. And I think that's a big question that so many people have. I'm not here to answer that. I'm just here to let people know that voice, that thing, that intuition inside of you that's compelling you to serve, you need to listen to it. You need to always listen to it. And someday it's going to say, stop, you're done. And when it says stop and done, you get out.
Mm. I think it probably crosses a lot of different genres outside of military as well. If you feel like you're done, LEO, fire service. I mean, these are jobs where you're out there. Yeah, you're on the front line and you're there to be. Your job is, and again, your expectation, and you mentioned this earlier in terms of the level of accountability is higher. You expect certain things, and when you can't deliver on that, or when you feel like you might be done, then you should be done. You should get out. You should be done because
that's honorable. Like that's not like, oh my
agreed.
God. That's the message as veterans I'm talking about. It's that. It's hey, like I served my ass off, and then I felt disenfranchised. I didn't feel like serving. I was like, I didn't want to go on another skydiving trip. And instead of sticking out for another 9 years and ended up being this super disgruntled Master Chief, what I thought was, and this is my intuition, I'm so thankful, was like, I'll get out. And for 9 years, I'll bust my ass at another profession that I love. And that will give me that 9 years that I will spend toiling. Well, then I'll find enrichment in that. And here's the thing, Scott. You're the first person I've talked to about this, that timeline has transpired. 9 years, 10 years now. And I've told this in podcasts and in conversation. Oh, 9 years, I'll be. This is the first time in my life since I was 12 years old that I can say that I genuinely love being alive most of the time. Like true, like that's who knew, man? Like who knew that foreshadowing would be so accurate? I had no idea. It took me 9 years, almost 10 now, to find actual like I actually give a shit about myself.
There's hope.
Yeah, and it's
right?
yes, it's me doing a lot of the work and my wife really doing the heavy lifting, but it's the people that walk through our door, man. It's the ability. It's the ability to be human around people that just need to feel human in this endeavor that's so violent. That's good, you know.
I wonder if a bit of it is like feeling human around somebody that actually knows what I'm feeling or what I've been through. I mean, it has to be a part of it too. When they walk through the door and just like I feel that, or I have felt that, or I wasn't aware that I was feeling that, and this dude or this group, your wife made me aware of that in a way I hadn't been aware of it before, which then allows you to take those next steps, whatever that is, into feeling better, to being good enough, to, the stopping with the self-deprecation, to being honest, again, the quote unquote, being authentic and finding the truth, in the journey.
Yep.
And the big message that I took away from that was just that there is hope, and it might take some time. Real
hope is worth because here's the cliche, right? Like when I really find somebody I really care for, and like I see they're on the path of like real, it's good. Inside I'm like, man, I hope this person finds a tremendous amount of suffering. Because that's where you find it. Like I guess I want to be peaceful and I want to find balance. But just like me, I look back at myself and I'm like, I never could have gotten to this place of truth had I not put myself through it and accepted it, allowed for that level of like, okay, I really got to go through this because I feel like this is going to get me to the next level of professionalism or safety or security. And that's a hard sell. That's a real hard sell to go, hey, like if you want to get to the top, like you might have to be this way. Because
takes a lot.
I only know me. Like
Right.
I know other guys that like have gone through and struggled in their own right and followed similar sort of paths of rehab. But that would be super naive for me to go, oh, I'm just like that guy. I'm just like he experienced just like me. It's like, no, like, whoa. No. We can say for sure that I respect what they've had to endure. But now, you already said it. Now I can hear someone's story authentically and hear it and go, yeah, man, that happened. I feel you, and I love you for it. And I really appreciate your willingness. Like one of my closest friends right now, he's one of the first ever MARSOC team leaders. He just headed down to Mexico this morning to do his ibogaine and 5-MeO DMT.
Okay. Yep.
And
life changer, man. From the game changers for me, game changer, and for a lot of the guys that come from your background as they tell their stories and can tell their stories, come out the other side. So they're game changers.
Those men and women that go through that treatment. Like my treatment was through Marcus and Amber Capone's sort of outreach. The mission is where the organization was originally that I went through, and the doctor there, Dr. Martin Polanco, is like saved my life, man. Like I have so much love, much love for the men and women willing to go do that. Not just the doctors, but because like,
dude, it's intense, and you got to get your shit together, man, because it is scary as hell to get to that point.
Thing I've ever kind of been through in a way that was the most. I mean, before that, I had done some psilocybin treatments, which kind of lessened the rocket launch, we'll call it.
Right.
And then since then, I've done probably more than a dozen different kinds of medicines.
Yep.
And not that that's the solution, but to going back to the point is like, I've never experienced like the most violent human beings on the planet just hugging and together,
breaking down,
feeling like, oh my God, like this is amazing. Like I never thought I could openly have these conversations and not be judged.
Yeah, that could be the biggest fear for most people.
Right?
Yeah, that could be the biggest fear. Yeah.
So like I have so much love and admiration for the people that serve and then go, man, I'm lost and I need some help. And then I've had a bunch of guys reach out that don't do it because they know after talking to me and talking with their wives, with us, like my wife's been with me talking to other husbands and wives and formers. And you can see right out of the way the guys that know that like you can see it. They go, if I go through this, all of those things that I covet, my vacation, my boat, my life, my wife, like, oh my God, my identity, like I've rooted for 25 years of my life. All my business has been rooted in former Navy SEAL, former Navy SEAL, former Navy SEAL. All my business adventures and advertisements have all been rooted in this identity that I've created. And there is this real fear that they're going to have to give up that identity. And the big secret is we can't say it because you have to experience it to make sense of it, right? It's like,
it's the ultimate exposure.
I can't hold your hand, but you can tell in me that what I went through is worth going through because you don't like what you see in the mirror either.
Right.
I took grease pencils and I blacked out all of my mirrors for 8 months.
Wow.
There's you're familiar with Transformers? And there's Shia LaBeouf and like writes all over the walls.
Yeah.
I did that in my bathroom more than once. Completely.
Wow.
Like I had a total breakdown, total mental breakdown in my house. But I look at that and go, I've been diagnosed with all sorts of shit from the VA, but all of it was bad behavior. I'm not bipolar. I wasn't in control of my violence and wrath.
There you have it. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I'm not schizophrenic. I just will get blackout violent, legitimately.
Well, your program, there's got to be a certain amount of programming that happens that way. I mean, that's why you were where you were at. Like, this is we're going to turn you on. and then we're going to turn you off.
Yep.
And we're going to turn you on when we want to turn you on, and we're going to turn you off. And then even when you don't want to be turned on, we're going to do it anyway. And we may not turn it off for a while. So just be aware. I had that
conversation with the psychs. And I stood up in the middle of it, and I was talking to my wife about this today. I stood up in the middle of the psychs, and there's a couple of us that were asked to come in to get the honest, like, hey, post-deployment, we're going to send you to Germany for a week to down-regulate or go to the Great Wolf Lodge. And I'm like, that's a terrible idea. And I was outspoken, and they wanted to know why. And they didn't like the truth. You know, it's like, you guys did this. You built this. You guys pre-selected us. Like, I know how I am. I'm a full-blown sociopath. And you know it. And but here's the beauty, is I blame them for so long. But had I not been that way, I wouldn't have been the operator, we'll call it, the guy that people trusted on target, that I trusted myself, and that I can look back. Like, there's a lot of behavior in my time in the military that I'm not super fond of. In a time I was very ashamed of a lot of my behavior and mistakes. But what I'm not ever afraid of or ashamed of is my time on target. I can stand right down and say every mission I did, I'm going to take that back. One, I didn't. One, I was in so much back pain. And that's because I wasn't taking care of myself. So there is one mission for sure that I totally shit the bed on. And that was right towards the end. And now, like, it's living with that for a long time and going, hey, that's not representative of me. That's one of the things I had to go through. And I'm so thankful I did, because it keeps me in a place to go, hey, man, no one gives a shit about your service.
Yeah. I was just gonna say that. Nobody cares.
Push-ups I did. Nobody cares how many Bronze Stars I do or don't have. Like,
nope.
Nobody cares. And it's like,
that's not why. That's not why I'm talking to you today.
No one gives a shit. Like, that would just keep perpetuating the ideology that I'm a character.
The identity. Yeah. The identity piece.
Yeah.
Man, I think it's interesting because I've listened to, I've never actually had this conversation that we're having right now one-on-one. I've listened to people talk, ex-operators talk, and been in the same room with them and got the feelings that I'm getting from this conversation, if you will. But I hope that there are other people that listen to this that get even just a fraction of what you're saying, particularly people coming from your background, that, and those thinking about that, wanting to explore the things that you've done because of the truth that you're bringing to the matter, and that you're very matter of fact about it, and you're not doing it in a way. This is what I take away. You're not doing it in a way that props up anything outside of you.
This. Like,
no,
we cannot sell this, and if we could, it wouldn't be in a packaged form, right? I've got things to offer, and that's easy. I'm a really good teacher, and what I teach is super easy. My wife is the one that, like, really, I get to sit back as a student and go, holy crap, man, like, this is on me. Like, is like, yep, every single time I'm like, holy crap, this is something, and it makes me a better coach. It makes me such a better coach with the work that she does with the guys. And and that's the hard sell is I look at our business and go, if there, because you can't sell this. Like, how do we?
It's not replicable either, man.
People,
you can't have two performance firsts, right? You can't, let alone 10. How do you scale it?
We can't scale this. There's only, I can't, and if I clone myself, I'm probably not going to get the same product, but like.
But you already said
is to get people to this. Like, I don't have a pretty face, but this is the face of the.
It's the one you got,
right? Yeah. It's the face behind it that's changing the world. It is.
Yeah, So
because all these, like, if we start talking, like, all these podcasts, all these people that are doing performance and mindset, what do they all end up getting to? Every single one. From the physical, if you stay long enough in the physical, if you're in the emotional space, if you're in the spiritual space, whatever, every single aspect of human performance trickles down into be still and know that I am God. Like, and this isn't a Christian statement at all, folks. Like, I'm not Christian in any stretch of the fashion. But I mean is, whether we get into, because we if we want to get into high performance, we have got to get into the breathing space. If we want to get into high performance of anything, we have to get into the breathing space. We have to. No high performer gets into a flow state without breathing to the flow state. That's how we get into it. That's how LeBron James is the LeBron James, because he can drop into a flow state, right? It's a practice or a gift, whatever you want to call it. But what we have is we have all these operators that are extremely intelligent. And then they have this extreme intuitive pull to go do this thing. And they spend enough time in the physical, they start, we go, hey, what's the next level? And everyone goes, hey, the next level is mindset. We go, okay, we get into mindset. We dig into it. We dig into it. What's the next level? Right? It's all meditation. It's all some sort of be still, go through your emotions, figure them out, shut out the things, or gently guide the things out of your thought that aren't useful, bring in the holistic thoughts of happiness, compassion, love, and whatever, right? They all end up into the highest state of human that we can achieve is the human that ends up into that deep introspective space of quietness, we'll call. But they got there by going, I need to improve my mind. I need to improve my intellect. I need to get in the flow state. I need to, and before we got into the flow state, it was, I'm going to get into the flow state through this physical exertion, this runner's high, this, that, and the other. Every single one of these cultures that we revere, the Vikings, the samurais, the Navy SEALs, what do we all end up talking about? All of us end up talking about mental toughness, mental skills, mindset, right? We talk, you get into Wim Hof breathing. We get into all these aspects of sport that all lead themselves into basically either a cave with Christ, or you're basically going to be in the forest with Buddha, right? Just
right.
What do you think he was doing?
Right.
So I kind of make jest of it, but that's the warrior. The greatest warriors of all time have been the ones that have been the most emotionally stable, spiritually strong, because that's what everything comes back to. I have all this violence and mechanism of violence that I perpetrate authentically, right? That's my job. And I come back, what do? I have to root my being into something that is true. And that's why so many of us find a church or find community or find our tribe. We're trying to find a place in which we could drop into and go, this is a solid foundation, which I can go, all this craziness I experienced, now I can make sense of it because I'm in a safe space.
That's it. It's safety. You feel safe. Yes.
But eventually our tribe, if we get into our tribe, we're like, man, I still want to have some growth. I'm not really, I don't totally relate to some of these ideological things that have value at one point. Maybe they don't now. And you go, where do I go? Well, maybe we dive more into church and go, well, the church is great, but that's not my people. They can't relate to my stories. They think I'm crazy. So what do? We end up getting alienated. We get alone because those communities in which we've historically found truth in and peace,
they're not ready for you.
12-year-old, 18-year-old kid that we were post-war.
They're not ready for you.
So where do we find this? So many people are looking to our veterans. And then that's a great thing. So many people are looking to authentic podcasts because now we have open form communication that people can relate with instead of just like buzzwords on the 6 o'clock news.
It's not sensationalized. Yeah.
No, but and I know we can go on and on about this, but our military is worth it. And our law enforcement is so worth it. And if our leadership isn't going to say something, then I am. I'm not afraid to be vulnerable and go, hey man, like I've been low, I cry, and it makes me feel better. Like you fucking try it, give it a shot, put your knees to the ground, and shed some tear. Get back.
Yeah. Before you start making decisions that you can't undo. And a huge passion of mine on the shows to talk with people like yourselves and have them spread that message, because there's too many of them, other ones that are making decisions that are irreparable.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be like that. It's a temporary solution, or it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And while it might take you a little longer, you mentioned, it's 10 years, or 9 years of, going through it to come out the other side, but worth it. And I believe you, and I agree with you 100%. All our LEO, our veterans, are all worth it, man. Every life is, but they need to. I think there's a little bit more coming together that needs to happen, and they need to be a little bit more exposure in a way that helps them hopefully feel a little bit more comfortable in talking more openly about it. As you mentioned, the word vulnerability there, and being okay with that, and making safe spaces for them. I wonder, like, we talked a little bit about the programming that you're doing. I was wondering if we can maybe just finishing up. There's ways for people to contact you, and I want to talk about that. But before we get to there, like, how do they get involved with your programs or whatever? There's a thing that popped up for me that I had questions about that looks pretty interesting, and that is this symposium or seminar that Can we talk about that? Like, what's going on? Because this thing looks intensive, and it looks like you're giving people exposure. Yeah,
extremely professional, right? So it's like, the NSCA, the National Strength and Conditioning Association, has the TSAC curriculum. I was part of that. Like, I know the author quite well. It's Mark Stevenson primarily, and some other guys obviously that are authoring the book, we'll call. But the curriculum itself really is pretty. It's basic but useful, and so,
like most of these things are.
Yeah, and in a way, in its own way. But it's like, where the usefulness in my opinion, where the usefulness ends is that there's not a lot of engagement, like that, like we say the NCAA is involved, but they're really just a governing body. They're not really involved in NSCA is like, your job is to be involved in engaging with our military and law enforcement, going, hey, these are good practices. These are great practices. Like the NTOA sees the NSCA as like it's an official body of, but there's no interaction. Like, there's no utilization of it necessarily, right? So my thoughts are like, well, okay, great. If they're not going to put out it, because if you look at their speakers, they're about to do their TSAC. They've already listed. It's like, of all their speakers, there's not a single one of them that works in the space. I mean, Mark's speaking, but he's not working in the space anymore. Jay Dawes has worked in this space in the past, and he's at Oklahoma State as a professor, right? And you have some other guys doing. It's like, if you work full time, there's real value, but you're missing it. And I look at it and go, everyone's missing the boat at the academic level, because you're missing it. You're missing the operators entirely. So
the application doesn't exist for you, right? And you're not evolving anymore. You may have done this in the past. You may have been involved in the past, but because you are not currently, you've hung it up to be a professor.
Gotta be. Like, if
it's not relevant
for 5 years, like, is former Navy SEAL Jeff Nichols going to be as relevant? No, and I shouldn't be, right? And so, just because you have a PhD, like, awesome. So use it, right? And that's where the problem is. Like, there's no symposiums that are happening. There's no clinics and conferences that are happening at a tactical level to go, you need to learn this, and it's important. If you don't learn it, you're a disservice. Like, we got to stop pretending that it's okay to not learn. We have to. We have got to stop. Right. That's why we're at where we're at, is because as soon as a new leader comes in, we're like, well, these ideas don't coalesce with my leadership principles, so we're going to scrap this program. And that's what happens. Every 2 years, the program gets scrapped, right? And so there's no continuity, right? And then the strength coaches within SOCOM and JSOC is a revolving door of leadership every 2 years. So they're constantly leaving. It's a leaping pad to go, I trained Navy SEALs. Well, no, you didn't, because reality is none of the strength coaches really do, because the team guys don't respect them. Like, when you had the top strength coaches in the world at the command, that's why they all left. That's why Mark Stevenson left. The best,
because we're listening to them.
They didn't and no one came to see them. So
Yeah.
they're like, why am I going to come here and not get used? So they all left. They all went to pro teams or the Olympic Training Center, or they went.
Okay.
So
Yep.
cool. Well, why? Because the leadership doesn't respect them. So let's get to the point of what we're talking about. So now there's enough of us in this. There's a couple of us in the civilian world that are really doing good. In my opinion, they're living and daily doing it. Myself, Sheldon Stevens, who is actually at Bragg, is the guy. Like, we'll just leave it at that. We can figure out who he works for, right? So he's coming up, right? We have Dr. Rebecca Ivory. She just finished recently her dissertation on operator syndrome, like specifically in NSW, hers research. So the clinical side of, okay, what's mechanically happening in your brain and what's going on in the hormones and why? Well, this is what's happening. Like, why is no one, she's not even getting, like, you know, this goes way back to a Dr. Kirk Parsley, who was the first one to introduce all this. And he was the senior medical officer at Warcom, and they basically ran him out because they said he was crazy. And he's like, you guys need to sleep better and take care of yourselves. And they said,
imagine that.
Crazy. So they forced him out. Now he's kicking ass in the civilian world, right?
Right.
So that's what we needed, a clinic. We needed a conference where operators, because we know their leadership isn't going to fund it and take care of it, right? Like, no one's going to get orders to this thing, and that's fine.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's at the level of the consumer that wants to share it. And all these conferences and clinics I've been to, it's like I've been to the NSCA conferences and I've spoken at so many of them. And at the end of it, I'm talking to the XO of all these units because they have the purse. But none of them give a shit. None of them really understand what they saw. They're
taking the free hotel and the trip.
Yeah,
it's
they had
the
trip in Vegas at the W Hotel and Resort, and they did it, man. We come back all excited, and they're like, "Yeah, we're not going to do this because we don't even know how to monetize this. Because if you're an XO or a Master Chief, you got to find out how that fits in your fit rep. And that fit rep only has value if you're managing money or people or both. Well, if you have a system that's like, hey, this is a $13 million program, but I don't understand any of this. Like, what's this device and what's a physiologist doing? Why do I need to see a dietitian? I know how to eat. No, you don't, motherfucker. You don't, right? So that's the point, is like what we've done is we've gotten, in my opinion, the brightest and the most actively doing in our military. There aren't many. Like Stu Smith is the only one I would say like would be a perfect fit to come and be as well. But it's like we already have 2 strength coaches. My history, Sheldon. So it's like, okay, we got those guys. Stu is definitely in the mix. Dr. Rebecca Ivory is right in the mix. My wife is obviously right in the mix. Then we have the tactical dietitian, Susan Lopez. She's a veteran. Her husband is in SOCOM, right? He's the operator.
Okay.
So she is the dietitian in Washington State at the Special Forces unit there. So she lives it. She works it. She's experienced it. Her husband is it. So we're bringing her in to talk dietetics, right? And then we have the best supplements, in my opinion, in the world are Thorne. We have the director of sports performance who deals with the UFC, deals with JSOC and SOCOM and all of the pro athletes. He's coming to speak on Thorne's behalf and go, hey, here's the no shit supplements. This is what's approved. This is what's not. This is why. So we're basically taking all these questions that their military has, really, and all the operators and go, let's solve it. Here, we got all the mindset piece. Got it. We've got the PhD. We've got the supplements. We've got the strength coaches. We've got the dietitians. We've got the meditation piece. Like, the only limitation is the size of our building and our budget, that we can't draw more people in and make a longer clinic. Because the NSCA,
nice problem to have.
Like, it's going to happen. And that's that we're doing this because we're tired of nonprofit governing organizations like the NSCA or the NCAA to promise and underdeliver. I'm tired of it. Like, it's got to stop. If you're the governing body, be the governing body or get the fuck out of my way.
Right, it's just it. Who are these people, by the way?
Come on, man. Like, what do you do?
Somebody wave a wand at you and tell, like, how does this even happen? Who are these governing bodies? Because if you're governing anything, what you end up governing in the end with these things, this is what I've seen in the fitness industry, is my comparison and contrast. And I'll come back to this in a second, but all you're doing is you're governing a piece of shit. That's all you're doing.
Where's the value, right?
There isn't any, dude. There isn't any. Yeah, there is none.
Obvious.
It's like the institution has just been the old guys passing down the information to the next generation of old guys to the next generation, and it just keeps perpetuating itself. It's much the same as the institution of education in general, depending on where you go, and there really isn't any value, and that's the thing. The problem is people continue to pay for it, and there is a large contingent of people that keep holding them up. These people
because
up there as
use or some sort of administrative check.
there you have it.
Like for 4 years. Here's the crazy thing, Scott. For over 4 years, more than one day a week, I volunteered my time to Chesapeake Police Department. They had a gym on site. I would go there. And we opened up our gym too for free, right? SWAT team, everything. And all we got was promise, promise, promise. And then they asked us to come do their in-service. So we did. And my wife and I, we were just like, what the fuck? Straight up, I go, what the fuck are we doing here? Like checking the block. And then we had the SWAT come in and go, hey, yeah, I got this. I'm in charge.
Yeah, sure you are, dude.
I guarantee you we'll be able to fucking blew us off, lied straight to my face. And so here's the deal, man. Like, I will go out of my way financially and time to take care of a law enforcement officer or an operator that needs help. But I will never, ever again stand in front of a leadership in our military and law enforcement, let someone blow smoke up my ass ever again.
Yep.
Like, no way, man. I'm not putting up with that shit. Like, if you're willing to stand there and lie to me, then I know what kind of an officer you are. Like, I know you're a shit officer that can't shoot for shit, and your guys don't respect you one bit.
There you have it.
And I got time for shit.
I had suspicions when I saw this thing come up. Then when I saw it, I was like, I see what this guy's doing here. And the people that you brought in, you've already mentioned, you've dropped a few names. But more specifically, who it's for. It isn't for leadership. Well, it could be, but it's not being marketed towards that.
That's who's not going to show up. That's exactly.
I tell you what, the people that go to this thing are the people that I want. If I showing up to my family's door, or I want on the front line the next time some godforsaken thing happens out there on the planet where we have to send people into to take care of business, the people that go to this, those are the people that I want going to those calls.
Our guys,
and so it's
you watch, like we'll stay in contact, man. You watch. Okay. Our guys, our men and women are going to change the face of our military in the next decade. You watch. You're going to have people that we've trained. They're going to take leadership positions. They're going to revolutionize health and wellness in our military. And it ain't my doing. It's because we gave them a platform of understanding that they will grow from. Their knowledge base will grow beyond me. And it should. Like, somebody will improve what we're doing. And I can't wait. I can't wait till some former Navy SEAL with an exercise science degree, because one of the classes that we had of 11 dudes, 7 of them had exercise science degrees. And so it's only a matter of time, man. Someone's going to come in and look at our system and experience it, go through the programs and go, oh man, I can make this way better.
Yeah, exactly.
Do it.
And that's awesome. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you're not like, take it, use it.
All this knowledge was given to me.
It's not proprietary, right? It's just, please take it, use it, spread it around. I love that. It's like you're seeding the crop for the future, and you're making it very fucking accessible. Yep. You know, when I look at it, it's like a 2 or 3 day seminar. It's in the spring, right? I think it's like April 21st to the 23rd, right? You're inviting people in. I know it's limited space, as you said, because you have a facility that can only hold so many people and whatnot. But you're making it very accessible for people from a price point, and when I looked on there, it's like, what's the qualification? Like, all you have to do is want to be here.
You want to learn, man.
Just fucking show up. So you're not gatekeeping. You're not gatekeeping, which is the other thing I see going out there with all this stuff. Like, oh, you can't be part of this program, or you can't come to this training because you don't have this qualification, or you didn't get signed off by this guy, you don't work for this agency or whatever else. Hey, you want to get better? Fucking come. Right? That's what it is.
I grew up, man. I grew up on a dirt road in Iowa. Like, legit. I grew up 3 miles from the town I went to school in, off a dirt road, man. Like, what did I come from? I came from a family that made no excuses about work. My dad drove a semi for 41 years. He missed 2 days of work. One was a broken rib and one was a kidney stone, and my mom hid the keys. My dad was going to go to work with he did. He went to work with a kidney stone prior. So it's like, that was my excuse. At 12 years old, I had my first full-time job in a dairy farm. Because like my dad's like, hey, I ain't got money, man. If you want new catcher's equipment, go get a job. I was 12.
Right.
So I started working in a dairy farm. You know, it's like, that's it, man. Like we will go out of our way. And it's like, Catherine and I, my wife, have been talking about this for a while. You know, the truth is this, in a couple years, whenever that would be, 6, 8, 10 years, somebody's going to step through our door. We're going to be like, that's the dude we're going to give our business to.
That's the next generation. Yep. Yeah.
That's the idea. That's the dream, right? You create a business that you can just hand off to someone and they can, I'm going to make this better. And that's why I didn't name it Jeff Nichols Performance.
Same. That's the same thing, man. The long
done after me. It's like I don't need I don't need any more reminder that my ego is as big as anyone's. You know, it's like
man. That was it's about the entity, and hopefully somebody can care as much and be driven as much as you can, and your wife is, in order to move the legacy forward. But in the meantime, I didn't want to get out of this conversation without mentioning that, because you are pioneering something different. You're going against the grain. I believe, most people that have listened to this at this point, if they've stuck with this, they know that at this point that you're a guy that's going to push back and is not doing the status quo. So you move beyond the status quo. And so whether you're a coach or whether you're in the game somewhere, LEO, military, first responder, whatever, this is an awesome opportunity for you to get something that is going to be different. But I'll say it at this, it's going to be better than what you could get maybe at that thing or from that thing that your agency is willing to finance or whatever. But at the same time, you've got credit. So like if you're I noticed, I think
NSCA,
you get CEUs.
We get
so
it.
if you're in the field.
Game, you bet. We have to. It's important. We have to give value to the law enforcement officer that's in the middle of the game.
Right.
They don't have to pay for the CEUs, but we're going to make sure they offer, so the leadership goes, oh, do you have what's important, that little check? But the operator's going to come back and go, got it, sir. But what they've learned is that, here's the thing, man. The reality is this, like it or not, I'll make this statement. There's nothing in the world that's ever been put together like this with that level of knowledge and understanding for the tactical space. Yeah.
This is the evolution.
We're not shooting. There are people out there, like guys here in the city, that are world-class shooters. That's not what we're doing. We are as good as what we do as anyone else, but we're going to do it together. And that's the cool piece, the thing that the other coaches are. I get to sit there for a couple of days and learn.
Yeah, I was just going to say, what a cool experience for you.
Yeah. So, it's amazing, like the classes that we do, the 6-week classes, like we bring in like the best running coaches in the world. We bring in dietitians. We bring in what the world hears as yoga is not yoga. We're bringing in like a legit master yogi for this next class to get like a further mind-body connection. Because that's what these guys are so good at, is like taking what they're feeling and putting it into their state of visual or action. No one in the world is better at it. We're just trying to bolster what they already are going to develop. And if we can give those tools to them easier, when they're through the selection and the mayhem and they can take on their own style of training that they love and enjoy, that's where the rubber really meets the road then.
And then we'll start really learning some shit, right? Then we'll really learn some shit when people go into
is, in a couple of years from now, we'll be moved from Virginia Beach. We'll have our physical location where we're going to end up, all on basically a prize. We're going to really even further change the game here once my son graduates high school. But my point is like, we're going to actually have a training location facility that people then our operators can come back through essentially and go, hey, what's new and what's updated and what better ways to heal, and go, here's what they are. And then they take that back to their unit as competent E5s and E6s. And then they make chief or whatever it may be. And then they start plugging those things into the unit. And it's like, cool, now it's yours.
Right.
Now it's yours.
Right. Yeah, I love that, because then the perpetuation continues, and it doesn't just it's not just you and your wife doing it, it's the student that becomes the teacher, right? It's ultimately where you want to get to.
I'm so good if I can't teach.
Right.
I can no
And
good
so
to you all. I'm no good to anyone if I can't teach.
So going back to those ancient civilizations and the warriors, and that's how it got handed down. The student became the teacher and was able to hand it down. Look, dude, so much today with all the things, and we just mentioned the seminar that's happening in April. But you have programs out there that are available for people. There's obviously people can come to your facility. What's the best way for people to, oh, and by the way, I don't want to go without saying, recently you just got the Instagram back up and online again after shit happened with that. And I know so many people that have dealt with that. I'm so sorry about that, man, but damn.
Reverse, right? Like that's me. And my mistakes led me to get the account hacked. And then my wife fucking rescued it, saved it, man. Like I got nothing, I got nothing cool to say about my ego got our business almost fucking like, a couple of years behind, in that sense of just, you realize how much information you have at your access to your business from a advertisement standpoint, like
right.
lots, but so in truth, a lot of good has come from it. And, our best way to track us down is Instagram, is me as an individual. I'm extremely active on it, specifically for the subscribers. Like there's an internal community there that I engage with, because if you have a question, I'll have an answer either in a video or I'll shoot an exercise in description and send it to you in that subscription side. My better half, my wife, is our business manager, which is why we don't just own a gym. She makes this such a viable, useful business for you all. And if you send an email in, it'll get responded to if you're respectful. Right. What I mean by respectful is, hey, bro, how do I get ready for D-League? So that's what I mean, and so, if you send an email, you'll get a response. If you send a direct message, you may or may not. If you're a subscriber, you'll get an answer. But I do a fair amount of Instagram lives because I'm not trying to alienate anyone. I'm just trying to appropriate my time to people that are committed. And with respect, I know different people have different levels of commitment financially, which is why we offer all these things, and we try to fill in those gaps so people aren't left with a lot of questioning. Like that's. Yep. And that's the last piece is like, that's what's so cool about the community is so many of you are so willing to learn. And so that's what we're trying to do is create a bunch of different avenues for you to learn at your scale and your level and your financial ability.
Gotcha.
And that's the idea. And like the clinic that we talked about, we're going to put live pieces of that on the subscription side and bolster that, but people can't attend. But it's always a practice of trying to get information out to you guys so it can help you. And that's what we're trying to do.
Oh man, I respect the hell out of what you're doing out there. This conversation just helped me to understand you so much better. And I think, in a world that needs more people like you and what you're doing on the whole, and there's so much to this, and I think I've gotten that from this conversation, man. I know you're a super busy dude. You're running a business. You're trying to have, you've got a family there, trying to be a husband, dad, all that kind of stuff. The fact that you've taken this much time out of your day to spend with me and go through that story, and share the things that you have, man, I just cannot thank you enough. And I was just talking to CC, my partner in business and in life here, about 2 weeks ago when I saw the seminar pop up. That, man, if we can make it out there and make that happen for us, we want to attend to support and learn. I couldn't imagine what 2 days, 3 days with you guys are going to be like. So I didn't want that to get left on set either, just in terms of people reaching out. So go follow Jeff and what those guys are doing out there, man. Thanks again for your time, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, we'll definitely we'll stay in contact, man. Like I said, you find your way out here, you're certainly welcome. Truly, you're certainly welcome. And I think that's the point of all this is like we're really all in this together. And I think podcasts do a lot to share people with that. And like that's what I offer is I offer people truth, but at a point of like, I'm not going to waver from what I think that's best for you. And it ain't going to be rooted in my experience necessarily, because fortunately I see the truth in people's eyes.
Yep.
And I'm there for that. And if you're showing up for the truth, man, you got my life, you got my time, and I'm going to give it to you.
All right, brother. Well, I appreciate you, and I definitely will stay in touch, and I hope to see you out there in Virginia Beach before too long. All right.
All right,
Take care.